Liam Carter sat frozen in the cafe doorway, staring at the filthy, barefoot woman limping toward him. Mud caked her legs. Her dress was torn. This was supposed to be the perfect blind date, a carefully arranged meeting between a millionaire seeking partnership and a woman his sister promised would understand his world. Instead, he was looking at what appeared to be a vagrant who'd crawled out of a ditch. His hand moved toward his phone, ready to call this disaster off before it even began. But then she smiled, not apologetically, not embarrassed, just genuinely smiled, and something in that moment made him hesitate. Before we dive into this story, I want to invite you to stick around until the very end to see how this impossible first impression transforms into something neither of them expected. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and connecting with all of you. The Riverside Cafe had exactly the kind of atmosphere Liam Carter preferred for first meetings. Understated elegance without pretension, large windows overlooking the water, enough ambient noise to keep conversations private without feeling isolated. He'd arrived 15 minutes early, as he always did, and claimed a corner table with clear sight lines to both entrances. Old habits from his investment banking days when reading a room could mean the difference between closing a deal and losing millions. Now, at 30, those instincts had shifted from boardrooms to something more personal, though no less important. His sister Rachel had been relentless for months about this setup, insisting that Elena Moore was different from the usual crowd, that she had substance, that Liam needed to at least try. He'd finally agreed, partly to appease Rachel, partly because the alternative was another Friday night reviewing quarterly projections while his 5-year-old daughter Mia slept upstairs, cared for by their nanny. Liam glanced at his watch. 20 minutes past their agreed time. His jaw tightened. Punctuality mattered. It showed respect, consideration, an understanding that other people's time held value. He'd built his fortune on that principle. Every minute accounted for, every opportunity maximized. The woman was already failing a test she didn't know she was taking. His phone buzzed. Work, as always. A client on the West Coast with concerns about their portfolio allocation. Liam typed a quick response, his thumbs moving with practiced efficiency across the screen. The investment firm he'd founded at 23 now managed over $200 million in assets, built from nothing but student loans, brutal work hours, and an almost pathological attention to detail. Mr. Carter? The cafe owner, Thomas, appeared at his elbow with a subtle smile. Another espresso while you wait? Thank you, Thomas. Make it a double. Liam returned the smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Thomas had known him for 3 years since Liam had started frequenting this place for its combination of excellent coffee and reliable Wi-Fi. The older man had watched him transition from a driven bachelor to a suddenly solo father, never prying, always professional. As Thomas retreated toward the bar, Liam's attention drifted to the riverside path visible through the windows. Couples strolled hand in hand, families guided small children on bicycles, joggers maintained steady paces along the waterfront. Normal lives. Simple lives. Sometimes he envied them, though he'd never admit it aloud. His phone buzzed again. Not work this time. Rachel. How's it going? Did she show up yet? Liam considered his response. Rachel meant well, but her enthusiasm sometimes overwhelmed her judgment. Still, she'd been his anchor when Mia's mother had walked out 18 months ago, citing incompatibility with motherhood and an unwillingness to compete with Liam's career for attention. Rachel had dropped everything to help him navigate those first impossible weeks, teaching him about nighttime feedings and separation anxiety while simultaneously helping him restructure his work schedule around single parenthood. Not yet. Running late. Give her a chance. Traffic can be crazy this time of day. He pocketed the phone without responding. Traffic was an excuse he'd heard 1,000 times in business meetings. It usually meant poor planning or competing priorities. Neither inspired confidence in a potential partner. Liam's definition of partnership had evolved significantly since Mia's birth. Before her, he dated casually. Attractive women from appropriate backgrounds who understood the demands of his lifestyle and expected little beyond expensive dinners and occasional weekend trips. After Mia, everything shifted. He wasn't looking for a companion anymore. He was looking for someone who could handle the reality of his life. A brilliant, exhausting 5-year-old who asked 10,000 questions daily, irregular hours despite his best efforts, and the emotional complexity of a man who'd been abandoned by someone he'd trusted completely. Rachel insisted Elena could handle it. A veterinary technician with her own business, she'd described. Grounded, compassionate, real. Liam remained skeptical. Compassion didn't pay mortgages or fund college educations. Real didn't navigate social expectations or understand the pressures of maintaining wealth in volatile markets. 30 minutes late now. Liam signaled Thomas for the check. This was clearly not happening, and he had better uses for his evening. He could be home in 20 minutes, relieve the nanny early, and spend quality time with Mia before her bedtime. They could work on the puzzle they'd started last weekend, or read another chapter of the book they'd been going through together. As he reached for his wallet, movement outside caught his attention. A woman had emerged from the riverside path, limping slightly, her silhouette backlit by the setting sun. As she came closer, Liam's mouth fell open. She was a disaster. Mud covered her legs from the knees down, splattered across what had probably been a simple summer dress. Her feet were completely bare, hair disheveled and damp, as if she'd been swimming in dirty water. She carried her shoes in one hand, expensive-looking heels, now ruined, and something bundled in her other arm. Liam stood, ready to signal Thomas that he was leaving before this person even made it inside. This couldn't possibly be his date. Rachel wouldn't... The woman pushed through the cafe door, scanning the interior quickly before her eyes landed on him. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something that looked like resignation. Liam Carter? Her voice was steadier than her appearance suggested, with a slight rasp that might have been from exertion. He stared at her, unable to formulate a response. Up close, beneath the mud and disarray, she had delicate features and striking hazel eyes that seemed to assess him as thoroughly as he was evaluating her. But the overall impression remained complete chaos. "I'm Elena Moore," she continued when he didn't answer. "I know this looks terrible. I'm sorry I'm late. Can I have just 2 minutes to explain before you leave? Because I can see you're about to leave." Her directness surprised him. Most people in his circles danced around uncomfortable situations with carefully crafted pleasantries. Elena just stated the obvious, holding his gaze without apparent embarrassment, despite looking like she'd been rolling in a marsh. Liam glanced around the cafe. Other patrons were beginning to notice them. Thomas had paused mid-pour, watching with barely concealed curiosity. 2 minutes. Thank you. Elena set her ruined shoes on the floor and carefully adjusted whatever she was carrying. Liam realized with a start that it was a small dog, wrapped in what looked like her cardigan, trembling and whimpering softly. "I need to make a call first. Is there somewhere I can—" She trailed off, looking toward the restrooms. "What happened to you?" The question emerged sharper than Liam intended, but his patience was wearing thin. Elena met his eyes squarely. "I found him in a drainage ditch about a mile from here, back leg caught in debris, partially submerged, probably there for hours based on his condition. Everyone was just walking past, and I couldn't just leave him there." Liam blinked. "You ruined your clothes and missed our meeting to rescue a stray dog?" "I ruined my clothes and I'm late to our meeting because I rescued an injured animal who would have died otherwise," Elena corrected, her voice quiet but firm. "I called my clinic's emergency line, and they're sending someone to meet me here in about 10 minutes. Then I can clean up and we can have our date if you're still interested. But honestly, if you're not interested because I chose to help instead of impress you, then we probably shouldn't waste each other's time anyway." The cafe had gone silent. Liam became acutely aware that their exchange was now the evening's entertainment for every patron within earshot. Heat crept up his neck. Not embarrassment exactly, but something close to it. This woman had just challenged him publicly, called in to question his values, and somehow made him feel small despite standing there covered in filth, while he remained perfectly pressed and clean. "The restrooms are in the back," he heard himself say. "Take whatever time you need." Elena nodded once, then moved past him toward the facilities, cradling the injured dog with surprising tenderness. Liam caught a closer look at the animal as she passed. A small mixed breed, matted fur, one leg hanging at an unnatural angle. The dog's eyes were wide with pain and fear, but it wasn't struggling against Elena's hold. Thomas materialized at his elbow again, this time with 2 espressos. "On the house," he said quietly, setting both cups on the table. "That woman just earned my respect. Takes character to do what she did." Liam sat down heavily, processing what had just happened. He'd been prepared for many scenarios tonight: awkward conversation, incompatibility, even being stood up entirely. He had not been prepared for this. His phone buzzed. Rachel again. "Any update?" She showed up, covered in mud. "Rescued a dog on the way here." The response came almost immediately. "That's so Elena. See? I told you she was different." Different was certainly accurate. Liam sipped his espresso, watching the restroom door where Elena had disappeared. Through the window, he could see a veterinary van pulling into the parking lot, emergency lights flashing discreetly. Professional, fast response. She'd clearly built solid relationships in her field to get that kind of service. The restroom door opened. Elena emerged, still muddy but having made some attempt to tidy herself. She'd washed her hands and face, twisted her damp hair into a practical knot, and removed the worst of the dirt from her legs, though the dress remained hopeless. She moved directly to the cafe entrance to meet the veterinary technician coming through the door. A young man who took the injured dog with practiced efficiency while conferring quietly with Elena about its condition. Liam watched the exchange with growing curiosity. Elena's entire demeanor had shifted into professional mode. She pointed to specific areas on the dog's body, asked targeted questions about the clinic's capacity. That evening, confirmed treatment protocols. This wasn't a bleeding heart amateur who'd acted on pure emotion. This was someone who understood animal medicine and knew exactly what she was doing. The technician left with the dog, promising to call with updates. Elena turned back toward the cafe interior, spotting Liam still seated at their table. She approached slowly, as if giving him every opportunity to signal that he was done with this disaster of an evening. Instead, he stood and pulled out the chair across from him. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly. "You're still here! You asked for 2 minutes. That was only 1. Liam gestured to the chair. "Please." She sat, moving with obvious exhaustion now that the adrenaline was fading. Up close, he could see scratches on her arms, probably from climbing down into the ditch. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the espresso Thomas had left. "I really am sorry about being late," Elena said, wrapping her fingers around the cup for warmth despite the summer evening. "Rachel told me how punctual you are, how much you value people's time. I value it too. But when I saw that dog—" "Tell me what happened," Liam interrupted. "From the beginning." Elena studied him for a moment, as if assessing whether he was genuinely interested or just being polite. Whatever she saw in his expression seemed to satisfy her, because she settled back slightly and began. "I left my apartment with plenty of time to get here," she started. "I know this area pretty well. My clinic is about 3 miles north of here. I was walking along the riverside path, actually enjoying the evening, thinking about what Rachel had told me about you and whether this whole setup was going to be as awkward as blind dates usually are." A small smile tugged at Liam's mouth despite himself. And I heard whimpering, faint, but distinct if you know what to listen for. Elena's hands tightened around the cup. "There's a drainage culvert where one of the side paths meets the main trail. I looked down and saw him there, trapped in debris that had washed down from the recent storms. The water level was rising. We're supposed to get rain tonight, and he was already partially submerged. Why didn't you call someone? Animal control? Emergency services?" "I did, while I was climbing down to reach him." Elena's jaw set in a way that suggested she'd had this argument before. Response time for animal emergencies in this district is typically 45 minutes to an hour, depending on other calls. That dog didn't have 45 minutes. The water was rising, he was going into shock from pain and hypothermia, and he was completely alone because every single person who passed by looked down, saw him, and kept walking. The quiet intensity in her voice struck something in Liam. He'd built his career on calculated risk assessment, on knowing when to act and when to delegate. But he'd also built it on recognizing moments when someone had to step up, when waiting for the proper channels meant losing the opportunity entirely. "So you climbed down into a drainage ditch in your date clothes to pull out a strange dog who could have bitten you," he said slowly. "He was terrified and in pain. He wasn't going to bite me. And yes, I ruined my clothes. These are just things, Liam. They can be replaced. That life couldn't be. Elena paused, then added more quietly, I called Rachel while I was waiting for the emergency van. Told her I was going to be late, explained why. She said to come anyway, that you'd understand. I wasn't so sure about that, but I promised her I'd show up, so here I am. Liam sat back, genuinely unsure how to process this woman. Everything about her contradicted his expectations, not just for tonight, but for what he'd come to expect from people in general. In his world, time was currency, appearances mattered, and practical considerations almost always trumped emotional responses. Elena had thrown all of that into a drainage ditch along with her expensive shoes. Why didn't you just go home and reschedule? He asked. You could have called me directly, explained the situation. I would have understood. Would you have? The question hung between them, challenging and honest. Liam thought about his initial reaction, the irritation at her tardiness, the judgment when he saw her condition, the immediate assumption that she was disorganized or didn't respect his time. Probably not, he admitted. Elena nodded, unsurprised. Rachel warned me that you're successful, busy, and that you don't waste time on people who don't meet your standards. She also said you're a single father who built everything you have from nothing, which means you understand hard work and sacrifice. I figured showing up messy but honest was better than making excuses over the phone to someone who'd already decided I wasn't worth the trouble. I hadn't decided that. The protest was automatic, but even as he said it, Liam knew it wasn't entirely true. Yes, you had. Elena's smile was small but knowing. You were literally getting ready to leave when I walked in. I don't blame you. This is objectively a terrible first impression. And yet you still came. I keep my commitments, even when it's uncomfortable. She met his eyes directly. Rachel thinks highly of you. That matters to me. And honestly, I was curious about the man who supposedly has everything but is lonely enough that his sister has to arrange blind dates. The observation landed with unexpected weight. Liam felt his defenses rising, the automatic shields he deployed when conversations ventured too close to uncomfortable truths. Rachel talks too much, he said, aiming for lightness and missing. Rachel loves you. There's a difference. Elena shifted in her seat, and Liam noticed her wince slightly. Can I ask you something? Apparently honesty is our theme for the evening. Go ahead. What were you expecting tonight? When you agreed to meet me, what did you think this would be? Liam considered the question seriously. I expected someone professional, put together, probably conventional in most ways. Good education, stable career, understanding of how demanding my life is. Someone who wouldn't create complications. Someone who would fit neatly into your existing life without disrupting it, Elena translated. Is that so wrong? I have a 5-year-old daughter. I run a company. I can't afford chaos. No one's asking you to afford chaos. I'm asking whether you're willing to consider that some things worth having are messy and inconvenient and don't arrive on schedule. Elena gestured to herself with a rueful smile. Exhibit A. Despite everything, the ruined evening, the unconventional circumstances, the growing audience of cafe patrons pretending not to eavesdrop, Liam found himself laughing. Actually laughing, not the polite chuckle he deployed in business settings, but genuine amusement. This is possibly the strangest first date I've ever had, he said. We haven't even ordered food yet. Give it time to get stranger. Elena's expression shifted to something more serious. Look, I appreciate you not walking out immediately, but I should tell you up front, I'm not going to be what you expected. I work irregular hours because animals get sick at inconvenient times. I volunteer at shelters on weekends. I have 3 rescue cats and a dog with anxiety issues. My apartment is small, my car is 12 years old, and I probably make in a year what you spend on dry cleaning. I don't care about money, Liam interjected. Everyone cares about money. You care about it differently because you have it. That's not criticism, it's just reality. What I'm trying to say is that our lives are very different, and I'm not interested in pretending to be someone I'm not to fit into yours. The directness was refreshing and slightly terrifying. Liam dealt with calculated communication constantly, lawyers who parsed every word, investors who danced around requests, clients who smiled while maneuvering for advantage. Elena just said what she meant, Consequences be damned. What if I'm not asking you to pretend, he heard himself say. Elena tilted her head, studying him with those sharp hazel eyes. Then I'd ask what you are asking for. Good question. Liam wasn't entirely sure himself. He'd agreed to this meeting to appease Rachel, to check a box that said he was trying to move forward with his life. He'd expected failure, or at best mild compatibility that would fizzle into polite distance within a few dates. He had not expected to be challenged, intrigued, and oddly impressed by a woman who'd chosen an injured dog over making a good first impression. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but I'd like to find out. Before Elena could respond, Thomas appeared at their table with menus. I took the liberty of putting together some options for you both. Nothing that requires formal attire to eat. He winked at Elena, who smiled gratefully. Thank you, Thomas. You're a lifesaver. Just returning the favor, my wife and I have 3 rescue dogs. I know the look of someone who can't walk away from an animal in need. Thomas placed the menus down with a flourish. The special tonight is pan-seared salmon with roasted vegetables. Excellent choice if you're trying to impress someone who's already seen you at your worst. Elena laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that made several nearby patrons smile. I'll take it, and possibly a very large glass of wine. Make that 2, Liam added. And Thomas? Thank you for the discretion earlier. What discretion? I didn't see anything except 2 people having an interesting conversation. Thomas departed with practiced efficiency. Alone again, Liam and Elena regarded each other across the table. The absurdity of the situation had morphed into something else, a strange comfort, as if they'd already passed some test that typically took weeks to navigate. Tell me about your daughter, Elena said, settling into her chair despite her disheveled state. Rachel mentioned she's 5? Mia. She's brilliant, exhausting, and the best thing that ever happened to me. Liam pulled out his phone, scrolling to his photos. He showed Elena a recent picture. Mia at the park, mid-laugh, her dark curls flying around her face as she climbed on playground equipment. She's beautiful. Elena studied the image with genuine interest. She has your eyes, same intensity, even at 5. She gets that from her mother, actually. The determination, the focus. When Mia wants something, she's relentless. Liam pocketed his phone, feeling the familiar ache that accompanied discussions of Mia's mother. Her mom left when Mia was 3. Decided motherhood wasn't compatible with her life plans. I'm sorry, that must have been devastating. It was. Liam was surprised by his own honesty. He rarely discussed this, even with close friends. Not just losing my partner, but seeing Mia try to understand why her mother chose to leave. How do you explain that to a 3-year-old? That sometimes people just decide you're not worth staying for. Elena reached across the table, her hand hovering near his for a moment before she pulled back, respecting boundaries. You don't explain it. You just love her enough that eventually the absence matters less than the presence. My father left when I was 6. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. I spent years wondering what was wrong with me that made him leave. Then one day I realized the problem was never me. Some people aren't built for responsibility. That's their limitation, not ours. The parallel struck Liam forcefully. Here was someone who understood, not theoretically, but through lived experience. He found himself leaning forward, the distance between them seeming to shrink. How did your mother manage? 3 jobs with a young child? Badly, if we're being honest. We struggled constantly, but she never made me feel like a burden. That mattered more than the nice clothes or the school trips I missed. Elena's expression softened with memory. She died 4 years ago, cancer. By then I was established enough in my career to afford the kind of care she'd never had access to while raising me. Some days I'm grateful I could give her that. Other days I'm angry it took so long. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. She would have liked you, I think. She had a thing for ambitious men with secret soft spots. Elena grinned suddenly. She would have given you hell about the expensive watch and the pressed shirt, but she would have respected the fact that you raised your daughter alone instead of outsourcing the hard parts. I have a nanny, Liam admitted. Full time. I couldn't manage otherwise. That's not outsourcing. That's recognizing your limitations and getting support. There's a difference between hiring help and abandoning responsibility. Elena accepted the wine Thomas delivered, taking a generous sip. Rachel said you restructured your entire business model when Mia's mother left. Turned down promotions, shifted to remote work, built systems so you could be present for school events and bedtimes. Rachel really does talk too much. She's proud of you. Let her be proud. Elena studied him over the rim of her wine glass. Besides, it's attractive when successful people actually prioritize the things that matter. Most of the wealthy clients who come through my clinic treat their pets like accessories. You strike me as someone who understands that some things are more valuable than money. Is that your impression based on our extensive 30-minute acquaintance? That's my impression based on the fact that you're still sitting here talking to a woman covered in mud instead of writing off the evening and going home to your daughter. Elena set down her glass with deliberate care. You're curious, maybe about me specifically, maybe just about whether someone like me can fit into your world. Either way, you're willing to push past the surface to find out. That suggests depth. Liam felt something shift in his chest, recognition, maybe, or the beginning of genuine interest. This woman saw through pretense with unsettling accuracy. She didn't flatter or defer. She just observed and stated what she saw, leaving him the choice of whether to engage honestly or retreat behind the protective walls he'd built. You're right, he said quietly. I am curious. About you specifically, not just as an experiment. Good, because I don't do well as anyone's experiment. Elena leaned back as Thomas arrived with their meals. The salmon looked perfect, presented with the kind of attention to detail Liam appreciated. They ate in companionable silence for a few moments before Elena spoke again. Tell me about your work. Rachel mentioned investments, but that's a broad category. Liam explained his firm's focus on ethical investing, seeking returns while prioritizing companies with strong environmental records, fair labor practices, and positive social impact. It had been an unconventional approach when he started, dismissed by many in the industry as naive or unprofitable. Now his firm managed hundreds of millions, proving that values and success weren't mutually exclusive. That's impressive, Elena said, and he could tell she meant it. Most people in finance seem to check their conscience at the door. Most people in any field do that if the incentives are wrong. I built my company around the idea that you can make money and make things better. It's harder, slower sometimes, but it's sustainable. Liam paused, then added, Mia's going to inherit whatever I build. I want her to be proud of where it came from. She will be. Because you're thinking beyond yourself. Elena smiled. See? Depth. But they talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Elena's work at the veterinary clinic, the challenges of running a small business, her volunteer work with rescue organizations. Liam shared stories about Mia's latest obsessions and the particular chaos of parenting a child who inherited both his work ethic and her mother's stubbornness. The cafe began to empty as the evening deepened. Thomas dimmed the lights slightly, creating an intimate atmosphere that felt both intentional and accidental. Liam realized with some surprise that he'd been talking with Elena for nearly 2 hours and had completely forgotten to check his phone even once. I should get home, Elena said eventually, glancing at her own phone. The clinic just texted. The dog's in surgery, but the prognosis is good. They'll keep him overnight for observation. Will you follow up with him? Absolutely. If his owners can't be found, and based on his condition, I doubt he has any, I'll probably foster him during recovery. I have connections with breed-specific rescues that can help place him once he's healthy. Of course she would. Liam shook his head with something between admiration and disbelief. You really do this regularly. Rescue animals, take them in, find them homes. It's what I'm good at. Everyone has their thing. You build wealth responsibly, I help creatures who can't help themselves. The world needs both. Elena stood, grimacing at her ruined dress. Though I'm going to need to figure out how to get home looking like this without getting arrested for public indecency. Liam stood as well, reaching for his wallet. My car's outside. I'll drive you. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. He met her eyes, letting her see he meant it. Besides, this way I get to make sure you actually make it home safely instead of stopping to rescue more animals along the way. Elena's laugh was warm and surprised. Fair point. I accept. They settled the bill, Liam insisting despite Elena's protests, and headed out to the parking lot. Liam's Mercedes sedan gleamed under the streetlights, a stark contrast to Elena's disheveled appearance. He opened the passenger door for her, noting her slight hesitation before she climbed in. "I'm going to ruin your upholstery," she warned. "It's just a car. It cleans." Liam closed her door and circled to the driver's side, sliding behind the wheel with practiced ease. Elena provided directions to her apartment complex, a modest building in a working-class neighborhood about 15 minutes from the cafe. The drive passed in comfortable quiet, broken occasionally by Elena pointing out landmarks or Liam sharing observations about the area. When they pulled up to her building, Elena made no move to exit immediately. Instead, she turned in her seat to face him directly. "Thank you for not walking away tonight," she said. "I know it would have been easier." Easier isn't always better. Liam surprised himself with the response, but he meant it. "Can I see you again? Even after this disaster of a first date?" "Especially after this disaster of a first date. You showed me who you are right away. No pretense, no performance, just honest priorities and genuine conviction. That's rare." Elena smiled, and Liam noticed for the first time how it transformed her entire face. "I'd like that. But fair warning, next time I'll probably arrive on time and clean. Don't hold it against me when I'm boring." "Something tells me you're never boring." They exchanged numbers, Elena promising to text him updates about the rescued dog. As she climbed out of the car, Liam called after her. "Elena?" She turned back, framed in the streetlight with her mud-stained dress and bare feet. "I'm glad you stopped for the dog." Her smile widened. "Me too." Liam watched until she disappeared into her building, then sat in his car for a long moment, processing the evening. Nothing had gone according to plan. Every expectation had been subverted, and somehow, impossibly, it had been one of the most genuine connections he'd felt in years. His phone buzzed. Rachel, naturally. "Well? You were right. She's different. Tell me everything. Tomorrow. I need to think." "That means it went well." Liam smiled despite himself. "Yes, it went well." He drove home through quiet streets, his mind replaying moments from the evening. Elena's directness when she could have made excuses. Her tenderness with the injured dog. The way she'd challenged him without cruelty, pushed back without aggression. The complete absence of pretense or calculation. At home, he relieved the nanny and checked on Mia, finding her peacefully asleep with her favorite stuffed elephant. He stood in the doorway of her room for a long moment, watching her breathe in the gentle rhythm of childhood sleep. For years, he'd built walls around himself and his daughter. After Mia's mother left, trusting anyone with access to their small family had seemed impossible. Everyone wanted something, connections, opportunities, association with his success. Genuine interest in him as a person, let alone as a package deal with a complicated child, had been virtually non-existent. Elena hadn't asked for anything, hadn't tried to impress him or mold herself to his expectations. She'd just shown up, messy, honest, unapologetic, and challenged him to decide whether he could handle someone real. Liam returned to the living room, poured himself a bourbon, and sat by the window overlooking the city lights. His phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "Dog's name is Charlie, according to the vet who scanned his chip. Owners moved 2 years ago and never updated their info. He's officially mine to foster now. Thanks again for tonight." Elena Liam typed his response carefully. "Congratulations on your new foster. Have dinner with me Friday? Somewhere that doesn't involve drainage ditches." The reply came quickly. "Only if you promise not to judge me for arriving clean and on time. I'll try to contain my disappointment. It's a date." "Good night, Liam." "Good night, Elena." Liam set down his phone and sipped his bourbon, feeling something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Not just hope, that had flickered and died too many times to trust easily. This was something more tangible. Possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, there was someone out there who could see past the success and the schedule and the protective barriers to the person underneath. Someone who'd choose the hard right thing over the easy comfortable thing, even when it cost her something. Outside, the city hummed with its usual Friday night energy. Inside, Liam sat in the quiet darkness of his home, thinking about mud-covered dresses and rescued dogs, and a woman who'd looked at his carefully constructed life and asked if he was willing to let it get a little messy. For the first time in 18 months, his answer was yes. Friday arrived faster than Liam expected, bringing with it an unfamiliar nervousness he hadn't felt since his early 20s. He'd chosen a different restaurant this time, a quiet Italian place in the Arts District, known for excellent food and an atmosphere that encouraged actual conversation rather than performance. No riverside views where rescue operations might interrupt the evening, he'd joked to Rachel when she'd called demanding updates. Liam arrived early again, though this time he'd deliberately chosen only 10 minutes ahead of their agreed time. He wore dark jeans and a casual button-down instead of his usual business attire, a conscious choice that felt strange and right simultaneously. The hostess recognized him from previous visits and led him to a corner booth that offered privacy without isolation. His phone showed 3 minutes until 7. Liam caught himself checking his reflection in the darkened window, adjusting his collar, then feeling ridiculous for the gesture. He was 30 years old, successful, confident in most areas of his life. Yet the prospect of Elena walking through that door had him second-guessing everything from his clothing choices to whether he should have suggested somewhere less formal. At precisely 7 o'clock, Elena entered the restaurant. Liam stood automatically, momentarily stunned by the transformation. She wore a simple navy dress that somehow made her eyes more striking, her hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. No mud, no torn fabric, no barefoot desperation. Just a beautiful woman moving toward him with a slightly shy smile that suggested she was as nervous as he felt. "You made it," he said as she approached, immediately feeling stupid for stating the obvious. "On time and everything." Elena's smile widened as she slid into the booth across from him. "I even wore shoes, actual matching shoes." "I noticed. Though I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed. I was expecting at least a minor animal emergency." Elena laughed, the sound filling the space between them with warmth. "The night's still young. Give it time." A waiter appeared with menus and water, giving them a moment to settle. Liam watched Elena scan the options, noticing the small details he'd missed during their chaotic first meeting. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the faint scar on her left hand that looked like an old bite mark, the careful attention she paid to prices despite his earlier insistence that dinner was his treat. "How's Charlie?" he asked as the waiter departed to give them time. Elena's entire face lit up. "He's incredible. The surgery went perfectly. Pins in his leg, but the vet says he'll make a full recovery. He's staying at my place now, though he's on strict crate rest for the next 6 weeks." "That must be challenging with your work schedule." "I've gotten creative. My neighbor's a retired teacher who loves dogs. She checks on him during my long shifts, and I've rearranged my schedule to be home as much as possible." Elena paused, her expression shifting to something more vulnerable. "I know it sounds crazy investing this much in a stray, but when you look into his eyes and see how grateful he is just to be safe and fed and warm, I can't explain it. It matters." "You don't have to explain it to me." Liam leaned forward slightly. "I watched you climb into a drainage ditch for him. I believe you." "Right. You did." Elena's cheeks colored slightly. "I've been thinking about that night. About how it must have looked from your perspective. Rachel called me the next day, said you told her it went well, but I wasn't sure whether you were just being polite." "I don't do polite for Rachel's benefit. If the evening had been a disaster, I would have told her." "So it wasn't a disaster?" "It was completely unlike anything I expected. That's not the same as a disaster." Liam studied her carefully. "Did you think it was a disaster?" Elena considered the question with the same directness she'd shown at their first meeting. "I thought it was either going to be the beginning of something interesting or the most embarrassing story I'd tell my friends for the next year. The fact that you suggested a second date moved it firmly into the interesting category." "Only interesting? I'm wounded." "Don't fish for compliments, Liam. It's unbecoming on a man who knows exactly how impressive he is." But Elena smiled as she said it, taking any sting from the words. They ordered, Elena choosing the pasta primavera, Liam opting for the ossobuco, and fell into easier conversation. Elena asked about Mia, and Liam found himself sharing stories he rarely told anyone outside his immediate family. The way Mia had started questioning everything, demanding detailed explanations for concepts most adults took for granted. Her recent obsession with marine biology, triggered by a documentary about octopuses that had led to 3 library trips and a wall covered with hand-drawn ocean creatures. She sounds brilliant, Elena said, genuine admiration in her voice, and exhausting in the best possible way. She is. Some days I wonder if I'm doing any of it right. Her mother was so confident, so certain about everything. I'm just making it up as I go, hoping I don't screw her up too badly. That's called parenting. The people who think they have all the answers are usually the ones making the biggest mistakes. Elena reached across the table, her fingers brushing his hand briefly before withdrawing. Besides, the fact that you worry about it means you're probably doing better than you think. Is that your professional opinion? That's my opinion as someone who was raised by a parent who questioned everything and loved me anyway. Trust me, Mia will appreciate the humility more than she'd appreciate false certainty. Their food arrived, interrupting the moment, but not the connection. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. Liam learned that Elena had wanted to be a veterinarian since childhood, but couldn't afford veterinary school, so she'd become a technician instead and built her own practice around mobile services for low-income families. There are so many people who love their pets but can't afford traditional vet care, Elena explained, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. They're choosing between feeding their kids and treating their dog's ear infection. I can't fix the whole system, but I can charge on a sliding scale and make house calls so they don't have to miss work. It's not lucrative, but it's necessary. That's remarkable. Liam meant it. Most people would chase the profitable route. Most people don't have a mother who died because she couldn't afford preventive care and caught her cancer too late. Elena's voice remained steady, but Liam heard the old pain underneath. I watched her delay treatment because the bills scared her. I'm not letting animals suffer the same way if I can help it. I'm sorry, that must have been horrible to witness. It was. But it also showed me what matters. We spend so much time accumulating things, building security, protecting ourselves from vulnerability. And then something like cancer comes along and reminds you that none of it means anything if you're not actually living for something beyond yourself. Liam set down his fork, struck by the parallel to his own wake-up call when Mia was born. He'd spent his 20s building wealth with single-minded determination, measuring success by portfolio growth and client acquisition. Then he'd held his daughter for the first time, and realized that everything he'd built would mean nothing if he wasn't present for the life he'd helped create. That's why you do the rescue work, he said quietly. It's not just about the animals. Nothing's ever just about one thing. The animals need help, yes, but I also need to feel like my day meant something beyond transactions and appointments. When I pull a dog out of a ditch or help a family keep their pet instead of surrendering it to a shelter, I'm choosing connection over convenience. That matters to me. Connection over convenience, Liam repeated. I like that. Do you practice it? The question landed with gentle challenge. Liam thought about his carefully structured life, the systems he'd built to maximize efficiency and minimize disruption. Connection required vulnerability, spontaneity, risk, all things he'd systematically eliminated since Mia's mother left. I'm trying to learn, he said honestly. For a long time, convenience felt like survival. After Mia's mother walked out, I couldn't afford to be messy or vulnerable. I had a child depending on me, a company to run, no safety net. Structure was how I kept everything from falling apart. That makes sense, but Mia's older now. Your company's established. When does structure become a cage instead of support? Liam felt the question settle somewhere deep in his chest. Is that what you think it is? A cage. I think you're here having dinner with a woman who climbs into ditches and takes in strays, which suggests part of you wants something different than what you've built. I also think you're terrified of what different might cost you. Elena met his eyes without flinching. I'm not criticizing. I'm observing. You can tell me if I'm wrong. You're not wrong. The admission came easier than expected. I am terrified. Every time I let someone close, every time I trust someone with access to my life or Mia's, I'm risking another betrayal. Another person who decides we're too much work or not enough excitement or just not worth the effort. That's a heavy weight to carry. It's realistic. People leave. They get bored, they find better options. They realize that single fathers with demanding careers and complicated children aren't the romance they imagined. Elena was quiet for a long moment, and Liam worried he'd revealed too much, too soon. But when she spoke, her voice carried understanding rather than judgment. My last relationship ended because he wanted me to choose between him and the rescue work. Said I cared more about animals than about us, that I was using volunteering as an excuse to avoid intimacy. She shook her head slowly. He wasn't entirely wrong. I was avoiding intimacy, with him specifically, because he'd proven he couldn't understand that my capacity to care wasn't finite. Loving animals didn't mean I had less love available for people. It meant I had enough to do both. What did you do? I ended it. Felt terrible for about 2 weeks, then realized I felt relieved. He wanted a version of me that didn't exist, someone who'd prioritize his schedule over an emergency call, who'd skip volunteering to watch football, who'd eventually settle down and focus on normal couple things instead of dragging home injured strays. Elena smiled without humor. I'd rather be alone than pretend to be someone I'm not. Is that what you think I want? A version of you that doesn't exist? I don't know yet. That's what we're here to find out. She leaned back slightly, studying him with those sharp hazel eyes. What do you want, Liam? Not what you think you should want, not what would be convenient. What do you actually want? The question was so direct, so unflinching, that Liam found himself answering with equal honesty. I want someone who sees past the money and the success to the person underneath. Someone who won't leave when things get hard or complicated. Someone Mia can trust, who'll show her that relationships can be stable and honest instead of conditional and temporary. He paused, then added quietly, someone who makes me want to be brave instead of careful. Elena's expression softened. That's a beautiful answer. It's also terrifying to say out loud. The best things usually are. She reached across the table again, this time letting her hand rest near his without quite touching. For what it's worth, I see you. Not the portfolio or the car or the expensive watch. I see someone who's built something impressive while raising a child alone and is scared to death that letting someone in will destroy what you've protected. You see all that from 2 dates? I see it because I recognize it. I've spent years protecting myself too, just in different ways. Elena's fingers moved slightly, close enough that Liam could feel their warmth. Maybe we're both tired of being so careful all the time. Liam looked down at their hands, nearly touching, but not quite, the small distance between them representing every fear and hope he'd carried for the past 18 months. Then, with deliberate slowness, he closed the gap, his fingers intertwining with hers. Elena's breath caught slightly, but she didn't pull away. Instead, her grip tightened, holding on as if to anchor them both through whatever came next. I'm not good at this, Liam said quietly. Opening up, trusting people, letting things be messy. I'm not asking you to be good at it. I'm asking you to try. They sat that way for several moments, hands joined across the table while the restaurant hummed with life around them. The waiter approached, noticed their connection, and smoothly diverted to another table. Liam felt something in his chest loosen, not the complete dissolution of his defenses, but a small crack that let in possibility. Tell me about your perfect day, Elena said eventually, her thumb tracing small circles on his hand. Not a work day or a responsibility day, just a day where everything goes exactly how you'd want. Liam considered the question. I wake up without an alarm. Mia climbs into bed with me like she used to when she was younger, and we talk about her dreams or her latest obsession. We make pancakes together. She's terrible at flipping them, but she insists on trying. We spend the afternoon doing something completely impractical, like visiting a museum or exploring a new neighborhood. And in the evening, after she's asleep, I have time to just exist without checking email or planning tomorrow or fixing today's problems. That sounds lovely and achievable if you let it be. What about you? What's your perfect day? Elena's smile turned wistful. I wake up to my animals, all of them healthy and happy. I spend the morning at the shelter, helping match pets with families who'll actually take care of them. Afternoon is house calls for my regular clients, the ones who trust me and appreciate what I do. Evening is quiet time at home with a good book and my fosters curled up nearby. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just peace and purpose and the knowledge that I made a few lives better. No room for anyone else in that perfect day? I didn't say that. Elena's eyes held his steadily, I'm just careful about who I invite into my piece. It has to be someone who adds to it rather than disrupting it. And if someone disrupts it in good ways, ways that challenge you to be better or braver or more than you thought you could be, then maybe disruption isn't always bad. She squeezed his hand gently. Are you planning to disrupt my piece, Liam Carter? I'm planning to try. If you'll let me. That's a dangerous offer. I'm already complicated enough without adding a millionaire single father to the mix. Good thing I like complicated. Elena laughed, and the sound dissolved the last of the evening's tension. They finished dinner amid easier conversation, discussing everything from Mia's latest school project to Charlie's recovery progress to their respective families. Liam learned that Elena's mother had been stubborn, fierce, and completely devoted to ensuring her daughter had opportunities she'd never had. Elena learned that Liam's parents were still married, living in Oregon, confused by but supportive of their son's unconventional path to single fatherhood. When the check arrived, Elena didn't protest his pain this time, which Liam took as a small victory. They left the restaurant together, stepping into the warm night air with an hour that felt both too short and perfectly timed. Can I drive you home again? Liam asked. Or would you prefer to maintain your independence and call a ride? I'd like you to drive me home, but I need to stop at the clinic first. There's a puppy I'm monitoring post-surgery who needs medication at 9. Of course there is, but Liam smiled as he said it, leading her toward his car. I'm starting to think every evening with you includes unexpected animal care. Is that a problem? No, it's who you are. I'm just adjusting my expectations accordingly. The drive to Elena's clinic took them through quieter neighborhoods, away from the restaurant district into areas where the buildings aged and the streetlights spread farther apart. Elena directed him to a converted house on a corner lot, painted cheerful yellow with a hand-painted sign reading, More Mobile Veterinary Services. This is yours? Liam asked, surprised by the wave of respect he felt. You own the whole building? The bank owns most of it. I own the dream and the debt. Elena unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't exit immediately. Want to come in? Meet some of the overnight residents? I'd like that. Inside, the clinic was clean but clearly operating on a tight budget. Equipment looked well maintained but not new. The walls needed fresh paint, and the whole space radiated the efficiency of someone who'd learned to do more with less. But the animals in their kennels appeared well cared for. The medication logs were meticulously organized, and everything spoke of dedication rather than neglect. Elena moved through the space with practiced ease, checking on each animal and providing quiet reassurance. Liam watched her work, struck by the tenderness in her movements and the way each creature seemed to calm at her presence. This is Scout, Elena said, approaching a kennel where a small terrier mix lay recovering. Hit by a car 3 days ago. Owner couldn't afford emergency surgery, was about to have him put down. I convinced them to sign him over to me instead, did the surgery at cost, and now I'm looking for a home that'll actually watch him around traffic. She opened the kennel carefully, lifting the puppy with support under his bandaged torso. Scout whimpered slightly, but settled against her chest, his tail attempting a weak wag. He's going to be okay? Liam asked, moving closer. He's going to be more than okay. He's going to live a long, happy life with someone who appreciates second chances. Elena administered medication with smooth efficiency, then returned Scout to his kennel with a gentle kiss on his head. Animals are resilient. They don't waste time on grudges or what-ifs. They just focus on healing and moving forward. Maybe people could learn from that. Some people do. Others stay stuck in their pain, using it as armor. Elena locked the kennel and moved to wash her hands. I've learned that the ones who heal are usually the ones who had someone believe in them when they didn't believe in themselves. Liam understood she wasn't just talking about animals anymore. He watched her dry her hands, the simple domesticity of the moment somehow more intimate than their earlier hand-holding. Thank you for showing me this, he said quietly, for letting me see what you've built. It's not much compared to what you've built. It's everything compared to what I've built. I manage money. You save lives. Liam stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Don't minimize what you do, Elena. It matters. She looked up at him, something vulnerable flickering across her face. Why do you see me more clearly than I see myself? Maybe because I'm not as close to it. Or maybe because I recognize someone who gives everything to everyone else and forgets to save anything for themselves. His hand lifted almost automatically, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that felt both bold and natural. Who takes care of you while you're taking care of everything else? I manage fine on my own. That's not what I asked. Elena held his gaze for a long moment, then admitted quietly, No one. I've gotten used to it. What if you didn't have to be used to it anymore? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was quite ready to fully acknowledge. Elena's eyes searched his face, looking for something, reassurance perhaps, or proof that he meant what he seemed to be offering. Liam, we barely know each other. 2 dates doesn't equal… I know. I'm not suggesting we rush into anything. I'm just saying that being alone isn't the only option anymore, for either of us. He let his hand fall but didn't step back. You spent our first date rescuing a dog. Let someone rescue you occasionally. I don't need rescuing. Everyone needs rescuing sometimes, even people who spend their lives rescuing others. Liam smiled gently. Especially those people. Elena was quiet for several heartbeats, then surprised him by stepping forward and wrapping her arms around him in a tight embrace. Liam froze for a fraction of a second, then returned the hug, feeling her shake slightly against his chest. Sorry, she murmured. No one said anything like that to me in a very long time. Then people have been failing you. Liam rested his chin lightly on top of her head, breathing in the faint scent of her shampoo mixed with antiseptic and animal fur. It shouldn't have been appealing, but somehow it was perfectly Elena, practical and caring and real. They stood that way for a while, the clinic quiet around them except for the soft sounds of sleeping animals. When Elena finally pulled back, her eyes were bright, but her smile was genuine. I should finish rounds and get home. Charlie needs his evening medication too. Let me help. Together they completed the remaining checks, Liam following Elena's instructions and learning the names and stories of each animal under her care. By the time they locked up and returned to his car, something had shifted between them. A deepening of trust, an acknowledgement of connection that went beyond attraction into something more substantial. The drive to Elena's apartment was comfortable, filled with companionable silence punctuated by occasional observations about the evening. When Liam pulled up to her building, neither moved immediately to end the night. I had a good time, Elena said, the simple statement carrying weight. Even better than last week, and that's saying something considering last week's bar was pretty low. I had a good time too, and I'd like to do it again if you're willing. I'm willing, but Liam… Elena turned to face him fully. I need you to know that what I showed you tonight at the clinic, this is my life. It's not going to change or diminish just because I'm dating someone. If that's going to be a problem… It's not a problem, Liam interrupted gently. It's who you are. I don't want you to change that. People always say that at the beginning, then they realize what it actually means. Canceled plans because of emergencies, limited free time, constant financial stress from taking cases I shouldn't. They get tired of competing with my work. I run an investment firm and raise a 5-year-old alone. I understand demanding schedules and competing priorities. I'm not asking you to choose between your work and me. I'm asking if there's room for both. Elena studied him carefully, then nodded slowly. There's room. If you're patient while I figure out how to make that room. I can be patient. Can you? Her smile turned teasing. Because you strike me as someone used to getting what you want when you want it. Maybe you'll be good for me then. Teach me to wait for things that matter. Dangerous talk, Mr. Carter. I might start thinking you're serious about this. I am serious about this. Liam reached for her hand again, linking their fingers together. I haven't been serious about anyone in a long time. But you make me want to try. Elena squeezed his hand, then leaned across the console to kiss his cheek. A brief, gentle touch that somehow promised more than words could convey. Good night, Liam. Thank you for dinner, and for understanding, and for seeing me. Good night, Elena. Thank you for letting me in. She climbed out of the car, pausing at her building's entrance to wave before disappearing inside. Liam sat in the quiet aftermath, his cheeks still warm where her lips had brushed his skin, feeling like he'd crossed some invisible threshold without quite knowing where it would lead. His phone chimed. Elena. Charlie says thank you for the nice evening. He's very sophisticated for a former ditch dog. Liam smiled, typing his response. Tell Charlie he's welcome. Same time next week? Make it Thursday. I have shelter duty Friday. Thursday works. Sleep well, Elena. You too. Liam drove home through streets that seemed somehow brighter than usual, his mind replaying moments from the evening. The way Elena's hand felt in his. Her vulnerability in the clinic when she'd admitted no one took care of her. The absolute certainty in her commitment to her work and the animals she served. At home, he paid the nanny and checked on Mia, finding her awake this time, reading in bed with a flashlight. You're supposed to be asleep, troublemaker, Liam said, settling on the edge of her bed. I wanted to finish the chapter. The octopus is about to escape from the aquarium and I need to know if he makes it. Mia set down her book, studying her father with the unsettling perceptiveness of children. You look happy. Different than usual happy. Do I? Yeah, like when I surprise you with something good instead of something broken. Mia grinned. Where were you? Having dinner with a friend? A friend like Aunt Rachel or a friend like a girlfriend? Liam hesitated, unsure how to navigate this conversation. Mia had asked about dating before, curious about why other kids had two parents while she had one. He'd always deflected, not wanting to introduce the possibility of someone new until he was certain they'd stay. But something about Elena felt different, worth the risk of mentioning, even this early. Maybe like a girlfriend, he said carefully. But it's very new, sweetheart. We're still getting to know each other. What's her name? Elena. She takes care of animals for her job. She has a clinic where she helps pets get better. Mia's eyes lit up. Like a veterinarian? Like a veterinary technician. It's similar, but a little different. That's so cool. Does she have any pets? Can I meet them? Can I meet her? The questions tumbled out with typical Mia enthusiasm. Slow down. Like I said, it's very new. But yes, she has pets. Several, actually, and maybe someday you can meet her when we're both ready. I'm ready now. I know you are. But these things take time. Liam smoothed her hair back from her forehead. I want to make sure she's someone special before I introduce you. Okay? Mia considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay. But Dad? I'm glad you look happy. You should look happy more. The simple observation pierced through Liam's carefully maintained composure. Out of the mouths of children came truth he'd been avoiding, that he'd been going through motions rather than living, protecting rather than experiencing, existing rather than thriving. I'm working on it, baby. Now finish your chapter, then lights out for real. Will you stay until I'm done? Of course. Liam settled back against her headboard while Mia returned to her book, reading with the fierce concentration she brought to everything she cared about. Watching her, he thought about Elena's question from dinner. When does structure become a cage instead of support? He'd built such careful walls around himself and Mia, convinced that control meant safety. But maybe safety wasn't the same as living. Maybe protecting Mia from potential hurt meant also protecting her from potential joy. Mia finished her chapter and set the book aside with a satisfied sigh. He made it, Dad. The octopus escaped and found the ocean. Good for him. Now sleep. Love you, Dad. Love you too, troublemaker. He turned off her light and headed to his own room, his phone showing another message from Elena, a photo of Charlie sprawled across her lap, his bandaged leg propped carefully on a pillow. He's decided my lap is his permanent residence. I may never move again. Liam responded with a photo of Mia asleep, octopus book still clutched in one hand. She asked about you tonight. Wanted to know if she could meet your animals. What did you tell her? That we're taking things slow, that when the time's right, introductions will happen. Smart. I'd hate to disappoint a 5-year-old who likes animals. You wouldn't disappoint her, but I want to be certain before I bring someone into her life. I understand. Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Those last 5 words settled into Liam's chest with unexpected weight. People always said they weren't going anywhere, right up until they left. But something about Elena's directness, her absolute refusal to be anything other than exactly who she was, made him want to believe her. Thank you for tonight, for all of it. Thank you for being willing to see my messy, complicated life and not running away. I'm done running. Good night, Elena. Good night, Liam. Liam set his phone on the nightstand and lay back, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. For 18 months, he'd convinced himself that careful was enough, that protecting what he had mattered more than risking it for something more. But Elena had walked into his life covered in mud and impossible to ignore, challenging every assumption he'd made about what he wanted and what he deserved. Maybe, he thought, as sleep finally claimed him, it was time to stop being so careful. Time to let life get a little messy again, to trust that not everyone would leave, to believe that some things, some people, were worth the risk of hoping for something real. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Thursday arrived wrapped in unseasonable rain, the kind of steady downpour that turned city streets into rivers and made Liam grateful for underground parking. He'd spent the week in a state of distraction unusual for someone who'd built his fortune on relentless focus. Client meetings blurred together, conference calls required conscious effort to maintain attention, and he'd caught himself checking his phone more times than he could count, waiting for Elena's messages that arrived with comfortable irregularity. She texted photos of Charlie's recovery progress, updates about Scout's successful adoption to a retired couple with a fenced yard, complaints about supply costs and insurance companies. Nothing romantic or calculated, just the natural flow of someone sharing their day with a person they trusted. Liam found himself reciprocating with snapshots of Mia's latest art projects and observations about market volatility, their communication developing an easy rhythm that felt more intimate than deliberate romance. Now, standing in his closet at 6:30 Thursday evening, Liam second-guessed his clothing choices for the third time. They'd agreed to keep tonight casual, Elena's request after a particularly exhausting week at the clinic, which somehow made deciding what to wear more complicated than formal occasions. He finally settled on dark jeans and a gray Henley, aiming for approachable rather than intimidating. His phone buzzed as he headed downstairs. Elena. Running 10 minutes late. Emergency call from a regular client. Cat ate something toxic. Getting her stabilized, then heading your way. Sorry. Liam smiled at the apology. 3 weeks ago, he would have been irritated by the delay. Now he simply appreciated the honesty and sent back a quick response. Take whatever time you need. The reservation's flexible. He'd chosen a small French bistro Elena had mentioned loving but rarely visiting due to price. Not ostentatious, but quality. The kind of place that respected good food without demanding pretense. The owner had assured him they could accommodate late arrivals. Rachel materialized in his kitchen doorway, having let herself in with her spare key. She'd volunteered to stay with Mia for the evening, claiming it was sisterly duty but transparently fishing for information about his dating life. You look nervous, she observed, leaning against the counter with poorly concealed amusement. It's adorable. I'm not nervous. Liam adjusted his watch, realized what he was doing, and forced his hand still. I'm just prepared. You're nervous. I haven't seen you like this since you pitched to your first major investor. Rachel grinned. Elena must be something special. She is. And before you start interrogating me about where this is going, I don't know yet. We're taking it slow. Liam, you've seen her 3 times in 3 weeks. For you, that's practically engaged. Rachel's expression softened into something more serious. I'm glad, though. Really glad. You deserve someone who sees you as more than a bank account or a business opportunity. Elena definitely sees me as more than that. She barely tolerates my bank account. But Liam smiled as he said it, remembering Elena's discomfort when he'd tried to pay for medication for one of her clinic animals. She'd insisted on reimbursing him, refused to accept it as a gift, and finally agreed to let him sponsor the clinic's supply costs for 1 month as a compromise. Mia thundered down the stairs, already in her pajamas despite the early hour. She launched herself at Rachel with her usual enthusiasm, then turned to inspect her father critically. You look nice, Dad. Is Elena going to think you look nice? I hope so, troublemaker. Be good for Aunt Rachel, okay? Bedtime at 8:30 and you know the rules about screen time. I know. Can I stay up until you get home, though? I want to hear about your date. Liam exchanged glances with Rachel, who shrugged with a smile. 30 minutes past bedtime if you're still awake. Deal? Deal. Mia sealed it with a hug that nearly knocked him off balance. Have fun, Dad. Tell Elena I said hi even though I haven't met her yet. I will. Liam kissed the top of her head, then grabbed his keys and headed out into the rain. The drive to Elena's apartment took longer than usual, traffic snarled by the weather, and a minor accident on the main thoroughfare. Liam used the time to compose himself, forcing down the unfamiliar anxiety that had been building all week. This was just dinner with someone he liked. No pressure, no expectations beyond enjoying each other's company. When he pulled up to Elena's building, she was already waiting under the entrance awning, holding an umbrella and wearing a simple green dress that made her eyes luminous even in the gray evening light. She smiled when she saw his car and hurried over, sliding into the passenger seat with a gust of rain-scented air. "Hi," she said breathlessly, shaking droplets from her umbrella. "Sorry again about the delay. Mrs. Henderson's cat has a talent for eating things that will kill him." "Is he going to be okay?" "He'll be fine. I induced vomiting, gave him activated charcoal, and he's staying overnight at the emergency clinic for observation. Mrs. Henderson feels terrible, but honestly, cats are like toddlers with death wishes sometimes." Elena buckled her seatbelt, then turned to really look at him. "You look nice. Very nice. Mia said to tell you hi, even though she hasn't met you yet, her words exactly." Elena's laugh was warm and surprised. "She sounds persistent. You have no idea. She's been asking about you all week. Wants to know when she can meet the lady who saves animals." Liam pulled back into traffic, navigating toward the restaurant with practiced ease. "I keep telling her we're taking things slow, but patience isn't her strong suit. Wonder where she gets that from." "Definitely her mother. I'm extremely patient," says the man who checked his watch 4 times during our first date. "That was different. You were 40 minutes late and covered in mud. And you stayed anyway, which suggests you're either patient or crazy." Elena's hand found his on the gear shift, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that was becoming comfortingly familiar. "For the record, I vote patient." They drove in comfortable silence for a few blocks, the rain drumming steadily on the windshield and the city lights blurring into watercolor smears. Liam found himself intensely aware of Elena's hand in his, the simple contact grounding him in a way that felt both new and essential. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said eventually, her voice quiet enough that he had to strain slightly to hear over the rain. "Of course." "When Mia asks about me, what do you tell her? Not just the surface stuff about my job, but about us, what we are." Liam considered the question carefully. "I tell her we're getting to know each other, that you're someone I care about and want to spend time with. That if things continue going well, eventually she'll meet you and can decide for herself what she thinks." "And what do you want her to think?" "I want her to see what I see. Someone genuine and kind who does work that matters. Someone who doesn't pretend to be anything other than exactly who they are." He glanced over at her briefly before returning his attention to the rain-slicked road. "Someone I'm starting to care about more than is probably wise after 3 weeks." Elena's grip tightened on his hand. "What if I told you I'm starting to feel the same way? I'd say that's either really good news or we're both setting ourselves up for significant disappointment." Always the optimist. But Elena smiled as she said it. "I prefer to think we're both brave enough to acknowledge something real when we find it." They arrived at the bistro to find the parking gods smiling. A spot opened directly in front just as they approached. Inside, the restaurant was intimate and warm, all exposed brick and soft lighting that made everything feel slightly magical despite the storm outside. The owner greeted them personally, leading them to a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. Elena studied the menu with obvious pleasure, occasionally reading descriptions aloud and asking Liam's opinion on dishes he'd never tried. They settled on sharing several items, a decision that felt significant in its implied intimacy, the willingness to eat from the same plates, to negotiate preferences, to find compromise in small things. "Tell me about your week," Liam said once they'd ordered, "beyond the cat who eats poison for entertainment." Elena launched into a detailed account of her past few days, a surgery that had gone better than expected, a difficult conversation with a client who couldn't afford necessary treatment, the ongoing battle with her accountant about the clinic's financial sustainability. She spoke with animation, her hands moving expressively, her face reflecting every emotion as she described the highs and lows of work she clearly loved despite its challenges. Liam listened with complete attention, struck by how different this was from conversations he typically had about work. In his world, everything was measured in returns and percentages, wins and losses quantified in dollars and portfolio performance. Elena measured success in animals saved and families kept together, in second chances given and suffering prevented. The contrast should have been jarring. Instead, it felt complimentary. "I'm boring you," Elena said suddenly, pulling back mid-story about a difficult diagnosis. "You're absolutely not boring me. Why would you think that?" "You got quiet. Usually means someone's mentally checked out while waiting for me to stop talking about work. I got quiet because I was thinking about how much I admire what you do, how you've built something meaningful with limited resources and refuse to compromise your values even when it costs you financially." Liam reached across the table to take her hand. "You're not boring me, Elena. You're inspiring me." Her eyes widened slightly, vulnerability flickering across her features. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you've known 3 weeks." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been putting pressure on yourself for years with no one to acknowledge it. Maybe it's time someone did." Their food arrived before Elena could respond, giving them both a moment to reset. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. Liam shared stories about Mia's school struggles. Her brilliance made traditional classroom structure challenging, and he was considering alternative educational options that might better serve her learning style. "She sounds gifted," Elena observed, spearing a piece of duck confit. "Have you had her tested?" "Twice. The evaluators say she's operating several years above grade level academically, but needs support with social integration. Basically, she's too smart to be challenged by her peers and too young to navigate the emotional complexity that creates." "That must be hard for both of you." "It is. Some days she comes home frustrated to tears because the other kids don't understand why she'd rather discuss ocean ecosystems than play tag. Other days she's fine, totally adapted and happy. I never know which version I'm getting." Liam set down his fork, the familiar weight of parental concern settling over him. "Her mother used to handle this stuff. She had instincts for it that I lack." "You're handling it fine. Better than fine, from what I can see." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "You're engaged. You're seeking solutions. You're putting her needs first. That's what matters." "Is it enough, though? What if she needs things I can't give her? What if my best isn't sufficient?" "Then you find people who can supplement what you can't provide. Teachers, tutors, mentors. That's not failure, Liam. That's wisdom." Elena paused, then added quietly, "And maybe, eventually, a partner who can help carry some of the weight, if you let them." The implication hung between them, simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Liam found himself imagining Elena in his life more permanently, meeting Mia, joining them for weekend activities, being present for the difficult moments and the victories. The image felt right, in a way nothing had since Mia's mother left. "I'd like that," he said simply. "When the time's right, when we're both ready." "Me too." Elena's smile was soft and genuine. "Though, fair warning, I come with a lot of baggage. 3 cats, 1 anxious dog, whatever fosters I'm housing at any given time, and a work schedule that makes planning difficult. I come with a precocious 5-year-old, a demanding career, trust issues that could fill a therapy textbook, and the lingering fear that anyone who gets close will eventually decide we're too much work. We're quite a pair." "We really are." Liam raised his wine glass. "To being complicated humans trying to figure out how to let someone else in." Elena clinked her glass against his. "To being brave enough to try." They finished dinner slowly, neither wanting to rush the evening despite the rain that continued pounding against the restaurant windows. Over dessert, a shared chocolate torte that was almost obscenely rich, Elena asked about Liam's family, and he found himself describing his parents with more honesty than usual. "They're good people," he said, scraping the last bit of torte from the plate. "Traditional, but good. When Mia's mother left, my mom wanted us to move to Oregon so she could help raise Mia. Took her months to accept that I needed to do this myself, that moving would mean disrupting Mia's entire life." "Do they approve of you dating again?" They approve of me being happy. Whether dating leads to that is still under debate. Liam smiled wryly. My mother keeps setting me up with daughters of her friends, nice women with appropriate backgrounds who she thinks would be suitable mothers for Mia. And none of them have worked out? None of them were real. They were performing what they thought I wanted, saying the right things, doing the expected dance. I could see the calculation behind every smile. He met Elena's eyes directly. You don't perform. You don't calculate. You just are. That's rarer than you realize. Elena looked down at her empty plate, clearly affected by his words. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I spent my entire childhood watching my mother perform, being cheerful when she was exhausted, confident when she was terrified, strong when she was breaking. She did it to protect me, to make sure I never felt like a burden. But it taught me that performing was what you did to survive. When did you stop? When she died. I realized that spending my whole life pretending to be okay had kept me from actually being okay. So I decided to just be honest instead. Lost some friends, gained peace of mind, and accepted that I'd rather be alone and real than partnered and fake. Until now. Until now. Elena's smile was tentative but hopeful. You make me want to risk it. Being real with someone else, not just by myself. Liam paid the check over Elena's protests, and they headed back out into the rain. The storm had intensified, wind driving the droplets sideways and turning Elena's umbrella inside out within seconds of leaving the restaurant. They made it to the car laughing and soaked, Elena's carefully styled hair plastered to her head, and Liam's Henley clinging uncomfortably to his chest. So much for looking nice, Elena gasped, trying unsuccessfully to wring water from her dress. You still look beautiful. Liam started the engine, cranking the heat. Wet, but beautiful. Flatterer, though I appreciate the effort. Elena shivered slightly despite the warming car. Can we make a detour? I need to check on Mrs. Henderson's cat at the emergency clinic. It's only 10 minutes out of the way. Of course. The detour stretched to 45 minutes once they arrived at the clinic, and Elena discovered complications with another overnight patient, a dog who'd developed post-surgical bleeding that needed immediate attention. Liam watched from the waiting area as Elena disappeared into the back with the veterinary staff, her wet dress forgotten as she shifted seamlessly into professional mode. When she finally emerged an hour later, she looked exhausted but satisfied. Sorry, the bleeding was worse than they initially thought. Had to assist with revision surgery. Don't apologize, this is what you do. Liam stood, noting the blood spattered on her dress and the deep fatigue in her eyes. Let me take you home. They drove through streets turned treacherous by flooding, Liam navigating carefully while Elena dozed in the passenger seat, her head tilted against the window. He used the quiet time to think about the evening, about how easily she dropped everything to help an animal in crisis, about her complete lack of pretense or apology for being exactly who she was. At her apartment building, Elena stirred as he parked. I'm terrible company tonight. I promise I'm usually more entertaining. You're perfect company. Come on, I'll walk you up. Under the building's awning, they faced each other in the yellow security light. Elena's dress was ruined, her makeup long since washed away by rain and exertion, her hair a disaster. She'd never looked more beautiful to Liam. Thank you for understanding about tonight, she said quietly. About the delays and the emergency, and Liam stopped her words with a kiss, gentle but deliberate, his hands coming up to frame her face. Elena made a small sound of surprise, then melted into him, her arms wrapping around his waist and pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, conveying everything words couldn't capture, want and trust, and the beginning of something that felt bigger than either of them alone. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. What was that for? She whispered. For being you, for showing me what real looks like, for making me believe that maybe I don't have to be careful all the time. Liam, whatever Elena had been about to say was interrupted by her phone buzzing insistently. She glanced at the screen and grimaced. It's the emergency clinic, the dog I just left. Answer it. Elena took the call, her expression shifting through concern to relief as she listened to the veterinarian's update. Okay, yes. I'll check in first thing tomorrow. Thank you for calling. She pocketed her phone and turned back to Liam with an apologetic smile. He's stable. They wanted to update me. See? You're needed, important, making a difference. Liam kissed her forehead gently. Go inside, get warm, get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. I'd like that. Elena hesitated, then added, Liam, that kiss? Was me being honest about how I feel. No pressure, no expectations, just truth. Good, because I feel the same way. She stretched up to kiss him once more, brief and sweet. Drive carefully. Text me when you get home. Yes, ma'am. Liam waited until she was safely inside before returning to his car, his lips still tingling from their kisses and his mind replaying the evening in vivid detail. The drive home passed in a pleasant haze, the storm finally beginning to break as he pulled into his garage. Inside, he found Rachel asleep on the couch and Mia passed out in her bed with a book clutched to her chest. He woke Rachel gently, sent her home with thanks, and checked his phone to find a message from Elena. Made it inside. Charlie's very disappointed. I smell like other dogs. Thank you for tonight, all of it. Liam smiled and typed in his response. Thank you for letting me be part of your world, even the messy, emergency-filled parts. Sleep well. You too. Sweet dreams, Liam. He pocketed his phone and headed to his room, pausing to look in on Mia one more time. She'd kicked off her blankets as usual, and he tucked them back around her, marveling at how much his life had changed in 3 short weeks. For years, he'd operated under the assumption that opening up meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant inevitable pain. Elena was teaching him something different, that vulnerability could also mean connection, that letting someone see your mess didn't guarantee they'd leave, that sometimes the bravest thing was choosing to hope despite past hurt. As he prepared for bed, Liam's phone chimed one final time. Elena had sent a photo of herself in pajamas, surrounded by her animals, 3 cats draped across various surfaces, Charlie's head in her lap, and her anxious dog pressed against her side. My support team says you're allowed to keep coming around. They voted and you passed. Liam sent back a photo of sleeping Mia. My support team is reserving judgment until she meets you. But she's rooting for you. No pressure then. Just a tiny human with very strong opinions about everything. You'll be fine. That's what I'm afraid of. What if she doesn't like me? The vulnerability in the question struck Liam deeply. Here was Elena, confident in her professional life and certain in her values, suddenly anxious about the opinion of a 5-year-old she'd never met. It spoke to how much she cared, how seriously she took this developing relationship. She'll love you. How could she not? You save animals, you're honest, you're kind. Those are Mia's top 3 criteria for excellent humans. What are your top 3 criteria? Liam thought about the question seriously before responding. Honesty, compassion, and the courage to be yourself even when it's inconvenient. You excel at all 3. You're going to make me cry at midnight surrounded by animals. That's not fair. Then I'm doing something right. Good night, Elena. Dream of successful surgeries and healthy animals. Good night, Liam. Dream of stable markets and well-adjusted children. He set his phone aside with a smile, thinking that a month ago his dreams had been limited to exactly those things: professional success and Mia's happiness, the safe and quantifiable goals that carried no risk of personal disappointment. Now his dreams included hazel eyes and muddy dresses, emergency veterinary calls and kisses in the rain, the terrifying possibility of letting someone matter enough to hurt him. It should have felt dangerous. Instead, it felt like finally waking up after years of sleepwalking through his own life. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and quiet. Inside, Liam lay in the darkness and let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd found something worth the risk of believing in. Someone who saw his carefully constructed walls not as challenges to overcome, but as protection he'd needed and could now, slowly, begin to dismantle. Someone who made him want to be brave instead of careful, real instead of perfect, open instead of defended. Someone like Elena. The following Saturday morning arrived bright and cool, the storm's aftermath leaving the city scrubbed clean and sparkling under autumn sunlight. Liam woke to Mia bouncing on his bed with her usual weekend enthusiasm, already dressed and clutching a drawing she'd made of what appeared to be a veterinary clinic populated entirely by purple octopuses. "Can we go to the park today?" she demanded, shoving the drawing in his face. "And can Elena come? I drew her clinic and I want to show her, and maybe she can bring some of her animals because I really want to meet them. And Aunt Rachel said you've been seeing her a lot, which means it's probably time for me to meet her too, right?" Liam sat up slowly, his brain struggling to process the rapid-fire questions before coffee. "Good morning to you too, troublemaker. Take a breath." "I did. Now can we? Please?" Mia's eyes were wide with hope and determination, a combination Liam had never successfully resisted. "Let me talk to Elena first. She might be working today, and even if she's not, we need to make sure she's ready to meet you." "Why wouldn't she be ready? I'm excellent at meeting people." "You are. But this is important, so we want to do it right." Liam pulled Mia into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Give me an hour to wake up and figure things out, okay?" Mia agreed with obvious reluctance, extracting a promise that he'd ask Elena immediately after breakfast. She thundered back downstairs to watch cartoons, leaving Liam to contemplate the conversation he was about to have. He and Elena had been dating for 6 weeks now, falling into a comfortable rhythm of dinners, phone calls, and stolen moments between her emergencies and his responsibilities. They'd navigated the early stages carefully, both aware that whatever was developing between them carried weight beyond typical dating. But introducing Elena to Mia felt like crossing a threshold, making something private suddenly real and witnessed. Over coffee, Liam composed and deleted several texts before settling on simple honesty. "Mia's asking to meet you. She drew you a picture of your clinic with purple octopuses. No pressure, but if you're ready, we could do something casual today. Park, maybe? Low stakes?" Elena's response came within minutes. "Purple octopuses sound amazing. I'm terrified and excited in equal measure. What if she hates me?" "She won't hate you. She's been campaigning to meet you for weeks. That doesn't mean she'll actually like me when we meet. Kids have good instincts about people." Exactly. Which is why she'll love you. You're genuine, kind, and you save animals. You're basically designed to appeal to 5-year-olds. There was a longer pause before Elena replied. "Okay. Yes. Let's do this before I overthink myself into a panic. What time?" They agreed on 11 at the park near Liam's house, giving Elena time to finish morning rounds at the clinic and Liam time to prepare Mia for the actual reality of meeting the woman she'd been building up in her imagination. "Remember," he said as they walked to the park, Mia practically vibrating with anticipation. "Elena might be nervous. She wants you to like her, so be your wonderful self, but maybe dial down the intensity a tiny bit." "I'm not intense. I'm enthusiastic." "You're both, and I love that about you. I'm just saying, let her warm up before you hit her with the full force of Mia." His daughter considered this seriously. "Okay, I'll start with medium Mia and work up to full Mia." Perfect compromise. They arrived at the park to find Elena already there, sitting on a bench near the playground with a canvas bag at her feet. She stood when she saw them, her smile bright, but her posture betraying nervousness. She wore jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking younger and more vulnerable than Liam had seen her. "Hi," she said as they approached, her eyes moving between Liam and Mia with obvious uncertainty. "Hi yourself." Liam reached out to squeeze her hand briefly before turning to his daughter. "Mia, this is Elena. Elena, meet Mia." Mia studied Elena with the unnerving directness of children, her head tilted slightly as she processed every detail. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable before Mia finally spoke. "You're prettier than I expected. Dad's phone pictures don't do you justice." Elena's laugh was surprised and relieved. "Thank you. You're exactly as smart as your dad said you'd be, which is very smart." "I know, it makes school boring sometimes." Mia's attention shifted to the canvas bag. "Did you bring animals?" "Dad said you might bring animals." "I brought one animal. But you have to promise to be gentle, because he's still recovering from surgery." Elena reached into the bag and carefully lifted out Charlie, who'd grown considerably in 6 weeks, and now sported a bright red support bandage on his healing leg. Mia's entire face transformed with wonder. "Is this the dog from the ditch? The one you rescued on your first date with Dad?" "This is Charlie. He's doing much better now, but he still needs to take it easy. Elena sat back down on the bench, settling Charlie carefully in her lap. Want to pet him? Slow movements. Let him smell your hand first. Mia approached with impressive caution, extending her hand for Charlie to sniff before gently stroking his head. The dog's tail wagged tentatively, and he licked Mia's fingers with obvious approval. He likes you, Elena said softly. That's a good sign. Charlie's very particular about people. What happened to his leg? Elena launched into an age-appropriate explanation of Charlie's rescue and recovery, Mia listening with rapt attention and asking surprisingly sophisticated questions about the surgery and healing process. Liam watched them from a few feet away, something tight in his chest loosening as he observed the easy rapport developing between them. Can I sit with you? Mia asked eventually. I want to draw him, and I draw better when I'm close to my subject. Of course. Elena shifted to make room, and Mia settled beside her, pulling a small sketchbook and colored pencils from her backpack. She began drawing with fierce concentration, occasionally glancing at Charlie to capture details. Liam joined them on the bench, sitting on Elena's other side close enough that their shoulders touched. She leaned into him slightly, her free hand finding his and squeezing. She's wonderful, Elena murmured, her voice low enough that Mia couldn't hear over her own humming concentration. Exactly like you described, but somehow more. She likes you, I can tell. How can you tell? She's drawing. That's what she does when she's happy and comfortable. If she was uncomfortable, she'd be performing, overly polite, asking permission for everything, trying too hard. They sat in companionable quiet while Mia drew, Charlie dozing contentedly in Elena's lap, and children shrieking with joy on nearby playground equipment. The normalcy of it struck Liam forcefully. 3 people and a dog on a bench in the park, nothing dramatic or complicated, just simple presence and shared contentment. Done, Mia announced finally, holding up her sketchbook. She'd drawn Charlie with remarkable accuracy, capturing both his scrappy appearance and his gentle expression. Around him, she'd added flowers and butterflies, with Charlie the Brave written across the top in careful letters. That's beautiful, Elena said, genuine admiration in her voice. You're incredibly talented. I know. I'm going to be a marine biologist who also does art on the side. Or maybe an artist who studies marine biology for inspiration. I haven't decided yet. Mia carefully tore the page from her sketchbook and handed it to Elena. You can have it. For your clinic, maybe? To remember Charlie's rescue? Elena accepted the drawing with visibly shaking hands. Thank you, Mia. This is one of the nicest gifts anyone's ever given me. I'll hang it somewhere special. You're welcome. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to marry my dad? The question landed like a grenade, and Liam choked on air while Elena's eyes went wide with shock. Mia watched them both with innocent curiosity, completely unaware of the bombshell she'd just dropped. Mia, Liam managed finally, that's not an appropriate question. Why not? You said she's important. You smile different when you talk about her. And you told Aunt Rachel that you think you might be falling in love. So I thought maybe you were going to get married. You were eavesdropping on my conversation with Aunt Rachel? I wasn't eavesdropping. You were talking really loud, and I happened to be in the next room. Mia's expression remained maddeningly guileless. So? Are you? Elena recovered first, her composure returning along with a gentle smile. Mia, your dad and I are still getting to know each other. We care about each other very much, but marriage is a big decision that takes time to figure out. What we can tell you is that we both think you're pretty amazing, and any decisions we make will include making sure you're happy and comfortable, okay? It was a perfect answer, honest without being dismissive, serious without being condescending. Mia considered it carefully, then nodded. Okay, but for the record, I think you should marry him. He's been sad for a long time, and you make him not sad. That seems important. It is important, Elena agreed quietly. Thank you for telling me. You're welcome. Now, can we go play on the swings? Charlie can watch from the bench. Elena settled Charlie in his bag with water and a toy, and the 3 of them headed toward the playground. Mia claimed the highest swing and demanded that they push her, shrieking with delight as she soared higher and higher. Other families populated the playground, and Liam noticed several parents watching their small group with curiosity and something that might have been approval. After swings came the climbing structure, where Mia demonstrated her monkey bar prowess, while Elena and Liam spotted her with unnecessary vigilance. Then slides, then the spinning platform that made Liam mildly nauseous just watching. Through it all, Mia kept up a running commentary about school, her friends, her latest marine biology obsession, and her opinions about proper animal care based on what she'd learned from Elena during their brief conversation. "She's exhausting and delightful in equal measure," Elena observed as Mia raced off to join some other children in a game of tag. "I can see why you're simultaneously proud and perpetually tired. That's parenting a gifted child in a nutshell. Some days I'm in awe of her. Other days I'm just trying to survive until bedtime." Liam took Elena's hand, pulling her closer. "Thank you for being so good with her. That question about marriage aside, this is going really well." "About that question." Elena's voice was careful. "Did you really tell Rachel you think you're falling in love with me?" Liam's first instinct was to deflect, to minimize the confession his daughter had overheard and repeated. But Elena's directness had taught him something about the value of honesty, even when it was terrifying. "I did, because I think I am falling in love with you." He kept his eyes on Mia playing in the distance rather than watching Elena's reaction. "I know it's fast. I know we're supposed to be taking things slow, but somewhere between drainage ditches and emergency surgeries and watching you be exactly who you are without apology, I stopped being careful and started just feeling." Elena was quiet long enough that Liam finally forced himself to look at her. She was crying, silent tears tracking down her cheeks while she smiled. "That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me," she whispered, "and also the most terrifying because I'm falling in love with you too, and I have no idea what to do with that. We could start by acknowledging it's happening and agreeing not to run away screaming." "That seems reasonable." Elena wiped her eyes, laughing slightly. "Though, fair warning, I'm probably going to panic about this later when I'm alone and overthinking everything. When you do call me, we'll panic together." Mia returned at that moment, flushed and happy from playing. "I'm hungry. Can we get lunch, and can Elena come? I want to show her my room, and my ocean books, and my rock collection." Liam looked at Elena, leaving the choice to her. She smiled and nodded. "Lunch sounds perfect, and I'd love to see your room." They gathered Charlie and headed back to Liam's house, Mia chattering the entire way about everything Elena needed to see and know. At home, Mia gave Elena the grand tour while Liam ordered pizza, listening to his daughter's enthusiastic narration drifting down from upstairs. "This is my marine biology section, and these are my art supplies. And this is the puzzle Dad and I are working on. It's the solar system, and it has 5,000 pieces, and we've been doing it for 3 months. And this is Elliot, my stuffed elephant. He's been with me since I was born." Elena's responses were engaged and genuine, asking questions that showed real interest rather than adult condescension. When they finally returned downstairs, Mia had declared Elena officially approved for future visits. Over pizza, Mia dominated the conversation with questions about veterinary work, animal behavior, and whether Elena thought octopuses could be kept as pets. Elena fielded each question with patience and intelligence, neither talking down to Mia nor overwhelming her with information. "You're really good with her," Liam said quietly while Mia was in the bathroom. "Natural. She makes it easy. She's brilliant and curious and doesn't have any of the normal kid filters. I like that about her." Elena smiled. "I like a lot of things about both of you, actually." Before Liam could respond, his phone rang. Work, unavoidably urgent. A major client with a crisis that required immediate attention. He took the call apologetically, stepping into his home office while Elena and Mia remained in the living room. The call stretched to 45 minutes, complex problem-solving that demanded his full attention. When he finally emerged, he found Elena and Mia on the couch with Charlie between them, reading one of Mia's ocean books together. The scene was so domestic, so perfectly right, that Liam had to pause and just absorb it. This was what he'd been protecting himself against, the possibility of letting someone into the carefully balanced life he'd built with his daughter. The risk that it wouldn't work, that someone would promise to stay and then leave, that Mia would get attached and get hurt. But watching Elena patiently explain something about tidal pools while Mia hung on every word, Liam realized the greater risk was protecting himself so thoroughly that he missed the chance at something real. Sorry about that, he said, rejoining them. Client emergency. But we barely noticed. Elena's been teaching me about sea anemones. Mia yawned hugely. They're basically flowers that are secretly predators, which is very cool. Sounds like something you'd appreciate. Liam checked his watch, surprised to find it was nearly 4. Elena probably needs to get going, troublemaker. She has work tomorrow. Do you have to go? Mia's disappointment was obvious. We were having fun. I do have early rounds tomorrow, but this was wonderful, Mia. Thank you for sharing your day with me. Elena stood, carefully transferring Charlie to his bag. Maybe we can do it again sometime. Definitely. And next time you should bring all your animals. I want to meet everyone. That might be logistically challenging, but I'll see what I can arrange. Elena accepted a spontaneous hug from Mia, her eyes meeting Liam's over his daughter's head with an expression of wonder and slight overwhelm. Liam walked Elena to her car, while Mia settled into the living room with instructions to start her homework. Outside, Elena leaned against her car door and let out a long breath. That was intense. Good intense, but intense. She smiled up at him. Your daughter is incredible. Exhausting, but incredible. She loved you. I could tell. I loved her too. Which is terrifying because it means I'm not just falling for you anymore. I'm falling for your whole life. Elena's vulnerability was stark in the afternoon light. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not good enough at this? I don't have any experience with kids. You don't need experience. You need to be yourself, which is exactly what you were today. Liam pulled her into his arms, feeling her relax against him. Stop looking for ways this could fail and just let it be what it is. What is it? It's real. Messy and complicated and absolutely real. He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then finally her mouth, soft and sweet and full of promise. And I'm done being afraid of real. Elena kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt as if to anchor herself. When they broke apart, she was smiling despite the tears in her eyes. I'm still going to panic later. I know. Call me when you do. I will. She climbed into her car, rolling down the window to add, Liam, I meant what I said earlier, about falling in love with you, just so we're clear. We're clear. Drive safe. He watched her pull away, then returned inside to find Mia abandon her homework in favor of drawing. She looked up when he entered, her expression knowing beyond her years. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Liam answered anyway. I do. Is that okay with you? It's better than okay. It's good. Mia returned to her drawing. She's not like Mom, you know. She won't leave. How do you know that? Because Mom looked at me like I was an obligation. Elena looks at me like I'm interesting. People who think you're interesting don't leave. They stick around to see what happens next. The observation pierced Liam's heart with its accuracy and sadness. At 5 years old, Mia had already learned to read whether people genuinely wanted her presence or were simply tolerating it out of duty. You're right, he said quietly. Elena does think you're interesting and fascinating and brilliant and worth knowing. I think she's worth knowing too, so you should probably keep her around. Mia's tone suggested this was obvious common sense. Now, can I finish this drawing? It's Elena's clinic with accurate animal representations instead of purple octopuses. Liam left her to her art and settled in his office to catch up on the work he'd missed during the park visit. But concentration proved difficult, his mind replaying moments from the day. Mia's immediate acceptance of Elena, the easy way they'd interacted, Elena's confession about falling in love, the terrifying, exhilarating reality that he was building something with someone who saw both him and his daughter clearly and chose to stay anyway. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Made it home. Currently panicking as promised. Your daughter asked if we're getting married, and I admitted, I'm falling in love with you, and Charlie won't stop staring at me like he knows I'm having a crisis. Liam smiled and called instead of texting back. Elena answered on the first ring. Tell me this is crazy, she said without preamble. Tell me it's too fast and we're being reckless and should slow down. It probably is crazy. It's definitely fast. We might be being reckless. Liam leaned back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear. But I don't want to slow down, do you? No. Which proves I'm completely insane. He heard her moving around, probably pacing. Liam, what are we doing? 6 weeks ago, I was fine being alone. Now I'm falling in love with a man and his incredible daughter and reimagining my entire life to include people I barely know. We're not barely known to each other anymore. I know you take your coffee black with 2 sugars. I know you talk to animals like they understand complex sentences. I know you'd give everything you own to save a creature in pain. I know you're terrified of being vulnerable, but brave enough to try anyway. His voice softened. And you know me, the real me, not the successful businessman persona. You know I'm scared and scarred and doing my best to raise a child who deserves better than I can give her. You're giving her everything, Liam. Can't you see that? I'm trying. With your help, maybe I can actually succeed. He paused, then took the leap. Move forward with me, Elena. Stop panicking about the speed and just move forward. We'll figure out the details as we go. She was quiet for so long he thought she might have hung up. Then, barely above a whisper, okay, yes, let's do this. Yeah? Yeah. But if we're doing this, we're doing it right, which means meeting each other's people, integrating our lives properly, being intentional about building something that lasts. I can do intentional. When do I meet your friends? Next weekend. My best friend Kate is having a dinner party. Fair warning, she's protective and will absolutely interrogate you about your intentions. Good. Mia's protective too. You've already passed her test, so passing Kate's should be manageable. Liam heard Mia calling him from downstairs. I should go. Mia needs something. Go be a dad. Call me before bed. Absolutely. And Elena? Thank you for today. For being wonderful with Mia and honest with me and brave enough to keep saying yes even when it scares you. Thank you for making me want to be brave. Talk later. Liam ended the call and headed downstairs to find Mia had abandoned her drawing in favor of constructing an elaborate fort from couch cushions. I'm building Elena a clinic, she announced, for when she visits next time. She'll need somewhere to examine pretend patients. That's very thoughtful. Need help? Obviously. I can't reach the tall cushions. They spent the next hour building, Mia directing the construction with the authority of a seasoned architect, while Liam followed instructions and marveled at how quickly his daughter had absorbed Elena into their small family unit. When they finally finished, Mia insisted on bringing all her stuffed animals into the fort clinic for examination. You're the doctor and I'm the vet tech, like Elena, she instructed. And we have to save all these animals because that's what Elena would do. Liam played along, letting Mia lead the imaginative game while his mind wandered to the future taking shape around them. A future that included Elena's laugh at his dinner table, her gentleness with Mia's endless questions, her passion for work that mattered. A future where being vulnerable wasn't weakness but strength, where opening up didn't guarantee pain but offered the possibility of joy. Later, after Mia was asleep and the fort clinic stood sentinel in the living room, Liam called Elena as promised. They talked for 2 hours about nothing important and everything essential, mapping the terrain of each other's dreams and fears and hopes for what they were building together. I'm not panicking anymore, Elena said eventually, her voice soft with approaching sleep. I'm just excited. Terrified, but excited. Me too. Get some rest. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night, Liam. Tell Mia I said good night too. I will. Sweet dreams. He ended the call and sat in the quiet darkness of his living room, Mia asleep upstairs and Elena miles away in her apartment surrounded by rescued animals. 6 weeks ago, his life had been ordered and controlled and fundamentally lonely despite Mia's presence. Now it was messy and uncertain and filled with the kind of hope he'd thought died when Mia's mother walked away. Elena had taught him that some kinds of mess were worth embracing. That uncertainty could be exciting rather than terrifying. That hope, despite its risks, was better than the alternative of carefully managed emptiness. Liam checked on Mia one final time, finding her sprawled across her bed with the drawing of Elena's clinic clutched in one hand. He carefully extracted it, setting it on her nightstand where she'd see it first thing in the morning, then headed to his own room feeling lighter than he had in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, inevitable complications, and probably at least one animal emergency that would disrupt whatever plans they made. But for tonight, Liam let himself simply feel grateful. for muddy first impressions that led to real connections, for 5-year-olds who saw truth clearly, and for women brave enough to climb into ditches both literal and metaphorical to save what mattered. For Elena, who'd shown him that love wasn't careful or controlled or safe. It was messy and inconvenient and absolutely worth every risk. 3 months later, winter had settled over the city with the kind of crystalline cold that made breath visible and turned morning coffee into a necessity rather than luxury. Liam stood in his kitchen, watching dawn break over frost-covered rooftops, his mind occupied with plans that would have terrified him 4 months ago, but now felt inevitable and right. The velvet box in his pocket carried weight beyond its physical dimensions. He'd chosen the ring 2 weeks earlier with Mia's enthusiastic input, a simple platinum band with a small emerald flanked by diamonds, elegant without being ostentatious, meaningful without being excessive. The emerald had been Mia's suggestion, pointing out that it matched Elena's eyes and represented growth, which seemed appropriate for someone who spent her life nurturing living things back to health. "Are you nervous?" Rachel asked from the doorway, making Liam jump slightly. She'd arrived early to watch Mia for the day, claiming sisterly prerogative to witness his pre-proposal anxiety. "Terrified," he admitted, turning to face her. "What if I'm moving too fast? What if she's not ready? What if—" "Stop." Rachel crossed to him, placing both hands on his shoulders with the authoritative gentleness of an older sister. "You've been planning this for weeks. Elena loves you. Mia adores her. You've integrated your lives so thoroughly that half her animals are living here already. The only question is whether you're brave enough to make it official." "When did you become the voice of wisdom?" "I've always been the voice of wisdom. You've just been too stubborn to listen." Rachel smiled, then sobered slightly. "But seriously, Liam, this is right. I've watched you with her. You're different than you were with Mia's mother. More open, more yourself. Elena sees you and chooses you anyway. That's rare." "I know. That's what scares me. It feels too good to be real." "Then stop waiting for it to fall apart and just live in it." Rachel glanced at her watch. "Speaking of which, shouldn't you be leaving? Elena's expecting you at the cafe at 9. Liam checked the time and swore softly. He'd asked Elena to meet him at the Riverside Cafe where they'd had their disastrous first date, claiming he wanted to celebrate their 4-month anniversary properly. She'd agreed with the amused tolerance of someone who knew he was planning something but was kind enough to pretend surprise. Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in pajamas but wide awake with excitement. "Did you remember the speech I helped you write?" "I did. It's right here." Liam tapped his chest, where he'd memorized every word of the proposal Mia had insisted should mention both love and animals and the importance of family. "And you're going to tell her about the surprise after, right? The thing we've been working on?" "Right after, assuming she says yes." "She'll say yes. She'd be crazy not to." Mia launched herself at him for a hug. "I'm going to have a mom again. A real one who actually wants to be here." The simple statement nearly undid Liam's composure. He held his daughter tight, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent, and thinking about how much had changed since Elena had limped into his life, covered in mud, and completely unimpressed by his wealth or status. "Even if she says yes, nothing changes immediately," he reminded Mia gently. "We'll still take things at a reasonable pace, but yes, eventually you'll have Elena as a permanent part of our family." "Good. I already think of her that way anyway. Now go before you're late." Elena hates when people are late, even though she's late all the time because of animal emergencies. Liam laughed and grabbed his coat, pocketing the ring box one final time to ensure it was secure. The drive to the cafe passed in a blur of rehearsed speeches and mounting anxiety. He arrived 10 minutes early and claimed their original corner table, the same spot where he'd waited impatiently for a blind date he'd expected to disappoint him. The irony wasn't lost on him. That evening, he'd been convinced Elena would be another in a long line of incompatible prospects, someone who'd want to change him or use him, or eventually realize single fathers with demanding careers weren't worth the effort. Instead, she'd shown up authentic and unapologetic, challenging every assumption he'd made about what he wanted and what he deserved. Thomas appeared with coffee, his knowing smile suggesting he'd been briefed on today's significance. "She's lucky to have you, Mr. Carter. Though I'd argue you're equally lucky to have her. More lucky. Definitely more lucky. Liam accepted the coffee gratefully, using it to warm his hands and give them something to do besides fidgeting with the ring box. Elena arrived exactly on time, which Liam took as evidence of how important she considered the occasion. She wore a deep green dress that did in fact match the emerald in the ring, her hair loose around her shoulders and her face bright with barely contained curiosity. "You're being mysterious," she said in lieu of greeting, sliding into the booth across from him. 4 months isn't a typical anniversary milestone. What are we really celebrating? Can I just want to take my girlfriend to the place where we met? You could, but you're terrible at hiding when you're planning something. Elena accepted coffee from Thomas with a grateful smile. So, what's the something? Liam had planned to wait, to order food and make conversation and build to the moment gradually. But Elena was looking at him with such open affection and trust that all his careful planning dissolved. "The something is that I love you," he said simply. "And I want to ask you a question, but first I need to tell you some things." Elena's breath caught, her hand freezing halfway to her coffee cup. "Liam, let me get this out before I lose my nerve." He reached across the table to take her hand, feeling her fingers tremble slightly in his grip. 4 months ago, I was convinced I had my life figured out. I'd built safety through control, protected Mia and myself by keeping everyone at arm's length, convinced myself that being careful was the same as being smart. Then you showed up late and barefoot and covered in mud, and every single assumption I'd made about what I wanted fell apart. I remember you looked like you wanted to run screaming. I did want to run. I'd already decided you were going to be a disaster before you even walked in. Liam smiled at the memory. But then you explained about Charlie, about choosing to help instead of impress. And I realized you were offering something I didn't know I was missing. Authenticity, courage. The willingness to be exactly who you are even when it costs you something. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You make it sound much more noble than it was. I was just doing what felt right. That's exactly my point. You do what feels right without calculating the cost or considering how it looks. You climb into ditches for injured dogs. You perform emergency surgery and show up late to dates without apology because saving lives matters more than appearances. You met my brilliant, exhausting daughter and immediately saw her for the incredible person she is instead of viewing her as an obstacle. Liam paused, gathering courage. You've taught me that some things are worth the risk of being vulnerable, that opening up doesn't guarantee pain. Sometimes it leads to joy. Liam, what are you saying? He released her hand long enough to pull the velvet box from his pocket, setting it on the table between them. Elena stared at it, her hand moving to her mouth as tears spilled over. I'm saying that I don't want to be careful anymore. I want to be brave. I want to build a life with you that's messy and real and full of emergency veterinary calls and 5-year-olds asking impossible questions and all the beautiful chaos that comes with choosing connection over convenience. Liam opened the box, revealing the ring Mia had helped select. Elena Moore, will you marry me? The cafe had gone silent, other patrons watching with undisguised interest. Thomas had materialized near the bar, grinning openly. But Liam only saw Elena, whose tears were flowing freely now as she stared at the ring and then at him. That's an emerald, she whispered. Mia said it matches your eyes. She also said it represents growth, which seemed appropriate. Mia helped pick this out? She insisted, said she's going to be your daughter too, so she should have input. Liam felt his own voice thicken with emotion. So what do you say? Will you take on a workaholic millionaire and his precocious child? Will you let us take on your animal sanctuary and your midnight emergencies and your complete inability to say no when something needs saving? Elena was laughing and crying simultaneously, nodding before she could form words. Yes, of course, yes. How could I possibly say anything else? Liam slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and pulled her up into a kiss that drew applause from the surrounding tables. Elena kissed him back fiercely, her arms wrapping around his neck and her tears wetting both their faces. I love you, she said against his mouth. I love you and Mia and this ridiculous, beautiful life we're building together. I love you too, so much it terrifies me sometimes. Good. We should both be a little terrified. Means we're doing something that matters. Elena pulled back enough to look at the ring, turning her hand to catch the light. It's perfect. She has excellent taste. She'll be thrilled you approve. She's been impossible to live with for the past 2 weeks, keeping this secret. Liam settled back into the booth, pulling Elena with him so they sat on the same side. There's more, actually, a surprise we've been working on. More than a proposal? Different than a proposal. Do you remember mentioning you wanted to expand your clinic? Offer subsidized services to more low-income families? Elena nodded slowly, clearly unsure where this was going. I've been trying to figure out funding for months, but grants are complicated and loans require collateral I don't have. What if you had a partner? Someone who believes in what you're doing and wants to invest in making it sustainable. Liam, I can't accept money from you just because we're engaged. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a business partnership. Liam pulled out his phone, bringing up documents he'd had his lawyers prepare. I want to establish a foundation focused on accessible veterinary care. You'd run it, make all the medical decisions, hire staff. I'd handle funding and financial management, 50-50 partnership, completely separate from our personal relationship. Elena stared at the phone screen, scrolling through the proposal with growing astonishment. This is real? You've actually worked this out. With significant input from Mia, who insisted any foundation bearing our family name should prioritize animal welfare. She's very firm on her principles. Liam watched Elena's face, trying to gauge her reaction. I know it's a lot to process on top of the proposal, but I wanted you to know that I see your work, I value it, and I want to help make it sustainable so you're not constantly choosing between your calling and financial survival. I don't know what to say. Elena's voice was barely audible. This is everything I've dreamed about, but never thought possible. Say you'll consider it. Talk to your accountant, consult with colleagues, make sure it actually works for your vision. No pressure, no expectations. Just an offer from someone who believes in what you're building. Elena set down the phone and turned to face him fully. Do you understand what you're doing, what you're offering? I'm offering support to someone I love, whose work makes the world tangibly better. You're offering to tie your financial reputation to a small clinic that operates on razor-thin margins and takes cases other practices refuse. You're risking your professional credibility on my dream. Our dream now. If you'll have me as a partner in this too. Liam cupped her face gently. Elena, I've spent my entire adult life building wealth. It's time I spent some energy building meaning. You've shown me what that looks like. Let me help you expand it. What does Mia think about this? She thinks it's the best idea I've ever had. She's already planning the grand opening celebration and insisting we need a section specifically for marine animals, which I told her might be logistically challenging for a land-based clinic. Elena laughed, the sound bright with joy and possibility. You two are going to be the death of me with your grand plans and generous hearts. Is that a yes to considering the partnership? It's a yes to everything. The marriage, the partnership, the beautiful, complicated future we're building together. She kissed him again, softer this time, but no less meaningful. Though I reserve the right to panic about all of it later when I'm alone with my animals. When you panic, call me. We'll panic together, remember? I remember everything. Every moment from that first disastrous date forward. Elena glanced around the cafe, noticing their audience for the first time. We've made quite a scene. Good. Let them see what choosing love over fear looks like. Liam signaled Thomas, who approached with champagne already prepared. To new beginnings? To new beginnings and messy middles and happy endings we write ourselves. Elena raised her glass, her engagement ring catching the morning light and scattering rainbow prisms across the table. They stayed at the cafe for another hour, making plans and dreaming aloud about the future taking shape around them. Elena wanted a small wedding, immediate family only, probably in the spring when the weather would allow for an outdoor ceremony. Liam agreed, privately planning to ensure that whatever Elena wanted, she would have. They discussed the foundation logistics, Elena's eyes brightening as she realized the scope of what they could accomplish with proper funding and organizational support. I can't believe this is real, she said eventually, staring at her ring with wonder. 3 months ago, I was resigned to being alone. Now I'm engaged and planning a foundation and becoming a mother to the most incredible child I've ever met. Mia's going to lose her mind when we tell her it's official. She's been planning your integration into our family since the day you met. Should we go tell her now? I know we planned to have lunch first, but let's go now. She'll never forgive us if we make her wait. Liam paid the check and helped Elena into her coat, noticing how she kept touching her ring as if to verify it was real. The drive to his house passed in excited conversation about how to break the news to Mia. They decided on simple honesty, knowing she'd see through any attempt at dramatic revelation. At the house, they found Rachel and Mia constructing an elaborate welcome home sign with glitter and markers. "You said yes!" Mia shrieked the moment she saw Elena's hand. "I knew you would, but I was still a little bit nervous because what if you didn't, and then everything would be sad and terrible, and I said yes," Elena confirmed, kneeling down to Mia's level. "How could I say no when it meant getting to be your family officially?" Mia threw herself at Elena with enough force to nearly knock her over. "I'm going to be the best daughter. I'll help with your animals, and I'll be patient when you have emergencies, and I'll never complain about shared custody because you're not going anywhere, right? You're staying forever?" "I'm staying forever," Elena promised, her voice thick with emotion. "If you'll have me." "Obviously I'll have you. I picked out your ring." Mia pulled back to inspect Elena's hand critically. "It looks even better on you than I imagined. Very sophisticated." Rachel approached with tears in her eyes, pulling both Liam and Elena into a hug. "I'm so happy for all of you. You're going to be an amazing family." "We already are an amazing family," Mia corrected. "We're just making it official now." They spent the afternoon celebrating, Rachel staying for an impromptu lunch while Mia showed Elena the wedding binder she'd apparently been maintaining in secret. The binder included detailed plans for everything from flowers to music to a special section for animal guests because, as Mia explained, Charlie absolutely needed to be part of the ceremony. "He brought you together," she said seriously. "It would be rude not to include him." Elena agreed immediately, already imagining how to make it work logistically. As the afternoon shifted toward evening, Rachel departed and Mia eventually wore herself out, falling asleep on the couch with her wedding binder clutched protectively. Liam and Elena retreated to the kitchen where he started preparing dinner while she sat at the counter watching him with undisguised affection. "This is nice," she said softly. "Domestic. Normal. Is it what you imagined when you said yes?" "It's better. I imagined the big moments. The proposal, the wedding, moving in together eventually. I didn't imagine the quiet ones. Watching you cook while your daughter sleeps nearby and the winter light fades outside. This feels more real than any fantasy I could have constructed." Liam set down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables and moved around the counter to pull her into his arms. "Get used to it. This is our life now. Quiet evenings and loud mornings, animal emergencies and business calls, Mia's questions and our answers we make up as we go." "I can't wait." Elena rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I never thought I'd have this. A partner who sees my work as valuable instead of competition. A child who wants me around instead of tolerating my presence. A life that feels like it means something beyond just surviving day to day. You've always had a life that meant something. You just didn't have anyone witnessing it properly." Liam kissed the top of her head. "I plan to spend the rest of my life witnessing every meaningful moment and telling you how remarkable you are until you finally believe it. That's going to get annoying very quickly. Good thing you're stuck with me now." They cooked together in comfortable silence, moving around each other with the ease of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. When dinner was ready, Liam woke Mia gently, and they ate as a family, making plans for the weekend and discussing Mia's latest school project with the kind of casual intimacy that had developed over months of deliberate effort. After dinner, Elena received a call from the emergency clinic about a dog she'd been monitoring. Liam watched her shift seamlessly into work mode, asking targeted questions and giving clear instructions. When she hung up, she looked apologetic. "I need to go check on a patient. It shouldn't take more than an hour, but go. We'll be here when you get back." Liam handed her the keys to his car, since hers was still at her apartment. "Drive carefully." Elena kissed him goodbye and ruffled Mia's hair in passing, promising to return with updates about the patient. After she left, Mia turned to Liam with a satisfied smile. "See? She didn't even hesitate to leave and come back. That's what people do when they're actually committed instead of just pretending. When did you get so wise about relationships?" I've been paying attention. Plus, Aunt Rachel talks a lot about what healthy relationships look like versus what Mom's relationship with us looked like. Mia's expression turned more serious. Elena loves us the right way, the way that stays. Liam pulled his daughter close, marveling at her resilience and insight. She does. And we love her the right way too, the way that makes room for her work and her animals and all the parts of her life that matter. Obviously, that's how love works when you do it right. Mia yawned hugely. Can we start planning the wedding for real now? I have so many ideas. Tomorrow. Tonight you need sleep. Liam guided her through the bedtime routine, reading an extra chapter of her current book as celebration for the day's excitement. When Mia was finally asleep, Liam settled in the living room to wait for Elena's return. She arrived 90 minutes later, looking tired but satisfied. Patient stable. False alarm on the complications, but I'm glad I checked. She dropped onto the couch beside him, immediately curling into his side. How's Mia? Asleep and dreaming of wedding plans. You've created a monster. A monster who picked out the perfect ring and gave us her blessing. I'll take that trade. Elena held up her hand, admiring the ring again. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this was all elaborate wish fulfillment. If it is, we're sharing the same dream. Liam tilted her face up to kiss her softly. How are you feeling? Really? Overwhelmed, happy, terrified, grateful. Elena smiled against his lips. All of it at once. That sounds about right. They sat together in the quiet house, talking about everything and nothing as midnight approached. Elena shared her ideas for the foundation, already mentally organizing how to expand services and reach more families in need. Liam listened and contributed suggestions, struck by how naturally they'd learned to collaborate on plans that would shape their shared future. I should probably go home, Elena said eventually, though she made no move to actually leave. Let you get some rest. Or you could stay. Guest room's ready if you want separate space, but I'd prefer you in my room if you're comfortable with that. Elena's eyes searched his face. Are we moving too fast? Engaged after 4 months, already talking about living together? We're moving at exactly the right speed for us. Everyone else's timeline doesn't matter. Liam stood and offered his hand. Stay tonight. Wake up here tomorrow. Get used to the idea that this is your home now, too. She took his hand and let him lead her upstairs. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, years of practiced solitude giving way to the vulnerable intimacy of shared rest. Morning arrived with Mia bounding into the room, stopping short when she saw Elena in her father's bed. Her face transformed with delight. Are you living here now? Because you should definitely live here. Your apartment's too small for all your animals anyway, and we have space and I could help take care of them and… Slow down, troublemaker. Liam pulled Mia onto the bed between them. Elena and I are going to figure out living arrangements after the wedding. For now, she's just visiting. Boring. You should just move in now and save time. Mia turned to Elena. What do you think? Don't you want to live here with us? Elena laughed, clearly charmed by Mia's straightforward approach. I think your dad's right that we should take our time and do this properly. But yes, eventually I'd love to live here with both of you. Fine. But I'm telling you, waiting is overrated. Mia scrambled off the bed. I'm making pancakes. The kind Elena likes with blueberries. She disappeared downstairs, leaving Liam and Elena alone in the morning light. Your daughter is relentless, Elena observed. She gets it from me. I'm relentless about things that matter too. Liam pulled Elena closer. Good morning, by the way. How does it feel waking up engaged? Surreal. Perfect. Like I'm finally living in the right version of my life. She kissed him slowly. How does it feel proposing and having someone actually say yes with enthusiasm? Like I finally got something right. Like I stopped trying to control everything and let life surprise me instead. They eventually made their way downstairs to find Mia had indeed attempted pancakes with mixed success. The kitchen was a disaster, but the pancakes were edible and the intention was pure. They ate together at the kitchen table, Mia chattering about wedding plans while Elena and Liam exchanged amused glances over her head. This became their rhythm over the following months. Elena gradually integrated into their household, spending more nights at Liam's house until it made sense to officially move in. Her animals came with her, 3 cats who immediately claimed various pieces of furniture, her anxious dog who bonded instantly with Mia, and a rotating cast of fosters that kept life interesting. The foundation launched in early spring with a quiet ceremony attended by Elena's clients and colleagues. The expanded clinic allowed her to hire 2 additional technicians and offer services to families who'd previously had to choose between veterinary care and other necessities. Watching Elena work with her new staff, seeing her vision finally supported properly, Liam felt a satisfaction that eclipsed any business success he'd achieved. Their wedding took place in May, at the same riverside location where they'd met, though this time Elena arrived on time and properly dressed. Mia served as flower girl and ring bearer simultaneously, Charlie walking beside her with the rings attached to his collar. Rachel officiated, having gotten certified specifically for the occasion. The ceremony was small and perfect, witnessed by only their closest people and several well-behaved animals. When Liam and Elena exchanged vows, they spoke honestly about the journey that had brought them together. Elena mentioned the drainage ditch, the mud-covered dress, the choice to help instead of impress. Liam talked about learning to be vulnerable, about recognizing that some things were worth the risk of opening up. They promised not perfection but presence, not easy comfort but genuine connection, not careful distance but brave intimacy. "I promise to climb into ditches for you," Elena said, tears streaming down her face. "Literal and metaphorical. To choose what's right over what's convenient. To love your daughter as my own. To build this messy, beautiful life together with you." "I promise to let you," Liam responded. "To stop protecting myself from joy because I'm afraid of pain. To trust that you're staying even when it's hard. To be a partner worthy of your courage and compassion. To love you exactly as you are. Emergency calls, rescue animals, and all." Mia declared it the best wedding ever, mostly because Charlie behaved perfectly and the cake was chocolate. Rachel cried through the entire ceremony. Elena's best friend Kate welcomed Liam into their circle with enthusiastic approval. And as the sun set over the river where their story had begun, Liam realized he'd finally stopped waiting for disaster and started trusting in permanence. A year after the wedding, they stood in the newly expanded clinic, now bearing the name Carter Moore Foundation for Accessible Animal Care. Elena was showing a family how to care for their newly adopted dog, her patience and expertise on full display. Mia sat in the corner doing homework while simultaneously monitoring a litter of foster kittens. Charlie, fully recovered and officially adopted, supervised everything from his bed near the reception desk. Liam watched them from the doorway, his phone forgotten in his pocket and his mind free of the constant anxiety that had defined most of his adult life. This was what success looked like, he'd learned. Not portfolio performance or business expansion, but the daily choice to show up for people who mattered. Not careful control, but messy engagement. Not protection from hurt, but willingness to be hurt if it meant truly living. Elena caught his eye across the clinic and smiled. That same genuine smile she'd offered on their disastrous first date, when she'd been covered in mud and unapologetic about her choices. She was still making those same choices, helping instead of impressing, choosing substance over appearance, being exactly who she was without calculation or pretense. And Liam was still learning from her, still growing into the person she'd seen potential in when he'd only seen his own careful defenses. Together with Mia, they'd built something neither could have created alone. A family based on honesty and acceptance, a life that prioritized meaning over comfort, a love that was real precisely because it was allowed to be messy. "Dad, can I keep one of the kittens?" Mia called across the clinic. "I've been monitoring them for 3 weeks and I think the gray one really likes me." Elena looked to Liam, her expression clearly saying this was his call, even though she'd already fallen for the gray kitten too. Liam considered the chaos that another animal would add to their already full house, weighed it against the joy on his daughter's face and the hope in his wife's eyes, and made the choice that had become natural over the past year and a half. "One kitten, but you're responsible for feeding and litter duties." Mia's shriek of happiness echoed through the clinic, startling the kittens and making Charlie lift his head with what Liam could swear was canine amusement. Elena crossed to him, sliding her arms around his waist and resting her head against his chest. "Thank you," she murmured, "for saying yes to the chaos. Thank you for teaching me that chaos is where life actually happens, That messy and real beats careful and empty every single time. Liam kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of antiseptic and animal fur and the lavender shampoo she used. I love you. I love this life we've built. I love every muddy, inconvenient, perfectly imperfect moment of it. Even the emergency calls at 3 in the morning? Especially those. They remind me that I married someone who can't walk away from creatures in need. That's the same quality that made you stay when I was scared and defensive and doing everything possible to keep you at a distance. Elena pulled back to look at him, her eyes bright with emotion. You weren't that defensive. I was absolutely that defensive. But you were patient anyway. You let me learn how to open up at my own pace while still being completely yourself. Liam cupped her face gently. You saved me, Elena. Not dramatically, but daily. Just by being exactly who you are and showing me what honest love looks like. We saved each other. You gave me space to expand my work and a family to come home to. You saw value in what I do instead of viewing it as competition or inconvenience. You loved my mess instead of trying to clean it up. She stood on her toes to kiss him softly. We're pretty good at this partnership thing. The best, though Mia deserves significant credit for her matchmaking efforts and her insistence that we stop being careful and just commit. Speaking of Mia, she'd abandoned her homework in favor of playing with the gray kitten, who seemed equally enamored with her. Watching them together, Liam thought about the journey that had brought them here. From his careful, controlled life before Elena to this beautiful chaos of animals and emergency calls and a daughter who'd found the mother she deserved. It had started with mud and a drainage ditch, with Elena choosing compassion over convenience and Liam choosing to stay instead of running from something that didn't fit his expectations. Everything that followed, the dates, the integration, the proposal, the wedding, the foundation, this moment right now, had grown from that single choice to stay open to possibility even when it arrived in unexpected packages. As evening fell and they prepared to close the clinic, Liam helped Elena with final rounds while Mia carefully packaged the gray kitten for transport home. The routine tasks felt sacred in their ordinariness, checking water bowls, administering medications, ensuring every animal was comfortable and cared for. This was their life now, shared and messy and absolutely right. Outside, the winter evening had softened into the kind of twilight that made everything seem touched with magic. They loaded into the car, Liam driving, Elena beside him, Mia in the back with the kitten and Charlie, and headed home through familiar streets to the house that now held all their combined chaos and love. What should we name her? Mia asked from the back seat. The kitten needs a proper name. What about Grace? Elena suggested. For the grace we've all shown each other while learning to be a family. Liam reached across to take Elena's hand, thinking about grace in all its forms. The grace Elena had shown when he'd almost walked out on their first date. The grace he'd learned to extend to himself when he made mistakes as a father. The grace Mia offered daily as she adjusted to having a new mother figure in her life. The grace that allowed imperfect people to build something beautiful together. Grace is perfect, he agreed. Welcome to the family, Grace. As they pulled into their driveway, lights glowing warm through the windows of their home, Liam felt a contentment he'd never experienced during all his years of careful control and protective distance. This life, messy and loud and full of needs that couldn't be scheduled or controlled, was everything he'd been protecting himself from and exactly what he'd needed all along. Elena squeezed his hand as they climbed out of the car, her smile saying everything words couldn't capture. They'd found each other in the most unlikely way, built a family from broken pieces and new hope, created meaning from daily choices to show up and stay present and love honestly despite the risks. Inside their home, surrounded by the happy chaos of animals and a child and a partner who saw him clearly and chose him anyway, Liam finally understood what he'd been searching for during all those years of achievement and accumulation. Not success measured in dollars or status, but the quiet triumph of letting someone matter enough to hurt him and trusting they'd stay anyway. Not the careful life he'd planned, but the messy, beautiful life he'd found when he stopped planning and started living. Not perfection, but something infinitely better. Real love, real family, real joy found in the muddy, inconvenient, perfectly imperfect moments of choosing each other daily and meaning it. This was their story, beginning with a drainage ditch and a muddy dress, continuing through vulnerability and trust, and settling into the kind of happiness that came from brave choices and honest hearts. The kind that lasted not because it was easy, but because it was real. And as Liam watched Elena help Mia settle Grace into her new home, while Charlie supervised with dignified approval, he knew with absolute certainty that he'd finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Not someone who fit perfectly into his existing life, but someone who'd made him want to build an entirely new one. Someone worth climbing into ditches for, literal and metaphorical. Someone who'd shown him that the bravest thing wasn't protecting himself from pain, but opening himself to joy. Someone like Elena, his wife, his partner, his teacher, in the art of messy, beautiful, real love. And he'd never been more grateful for a blind date that started with disaster and ended with everything he'd never known he needed.